Hello, my name is Mar. Welcome back to my channel. This is by far the stupidest video I'm going to be making on this channel. I can already see all of the people seeing this video in their subscription feed and being like, what the hell is this? And then unsubscribing immediately, because today we are going to be talking about the insanity that is the show Big Time Rush. I feel like when it comes to the group Big Time Rush, there are two types of people. They're the people who have learned about the group through the show, and then they're the people that have learned about the group through their music. I was the former. I watched the TV show growing up as an 11-year-old girl, and then after watching the show, that's when I realized that the group actually performed the music outside of the show and released albums. As a kid, that just did not click in my mind. To give you some context as to actually why I'm making this video, I had COVID a couple weeks ago, and so when I was in bed sick, couldn't move, I was so tired, I couldn't do anything, I took it upon myself to watch every single episode that is the show Big Time Rush, because I saw it on Netflix and I hadn't watched the show since I was a kid, since it ended back in 2013. So I thought it would be fun to sort of look back at the show and see how well it aged. Spoiler alert, not that well. This is a show I genuinely don't think I could watch in a sober state again. I had when I was an 11-year-old kid and would watch the show every single day after I came home from school type of thing. I actually have to be in some type of delirious state, being sick, having COVID and all of that, to watch this show. It's kind of crazy. Just a little disclaimer. In this video, I'm fully talking about Big Time Rush in the context of the TV show, not them personally, outside in their personal lives, private lives, etc. I haven't followed the group super closely in recent years, so it's I don't know too much what they're up to privately. I know that they released a new album called Afterlife, and when I was working on this video, I may or may not have listened to the new album and their old album so many times that I became Big Time Rush's #1 listener on the Airbuds app. But yeah, anyways, I don't really know what the guys are doing outside, in their personal lives. I know some of them are starting families. I know some of them did kind of their own work, but I did watch interviews of the guys reuniting and all that, talking about their new album, just to sort of see why they came back, and also to get a little bit of tea from what happened at Nickelodeon. I don't really follow them closely personally. Anyways, let's start talking about the show. To give you some context on what Big Time Rush is. So Big Time Rush is an American musical sitcom television series that was created by Scott Fellows, and it originally aired on Nickelodeon from November 28th, 2009 to July 25th, 2013. So it was airing for 4 to 5-ish years. If you don't know who Scott Fellows is, Scott Fellows has created other sitcoms like Ned's Declassified School Survival Guide, Johnny Test, and 100 Things to Do Before High School. These are his most popular created series, I would say. As a kid, I remember watching Ned's Declassified School Survival Guide, but not on Nickelodeon. I remember watching it on this channel called Family Channel. We, as Canadians, we didn't get Disney Channel on our cable network until 2014-ish. We had to watch a lot of the television shows and all of that on this channel called Family Channel. And so Family Channel was a network that pretty much consisted of Disney shows, Nickelodeon shows, and Family Channel original shows that were Canadian made content kind of thing. So it's we got a whole mishmash of different shows. So I remember watching Ned's Declassified School Survival Guide when there was nothing else good on. I'd never really watched the show willingly. Johnny Test, I never watched, and 100 Things to Do Before High School, I did watch. And I feel I was one of the only people that watched this show because it only lasted one season, I believe, and it just wasn't popular. I think it was just not marketed well, and there was other sort of programs that are rivaling it at the time. So yeah, that is who Mr. Scott Fellows is. For the show, Big Time Rush, this whole show pretty much focuses on the Hollywood misadventures of 4 hockey players from Duluth, Minnesota, when they're recruited by this fictional mega music producer called Gustavo Rock to become a boy band. For the creation for the show, Nickelodeon partnered with Columbia Epic Label Music Group, I believe, to produce this show. The thing with American music labels is that there's so many of them, and then they're always doing different business transactions and all of that. So it's like one day someone's signed to Columbia, then the next day they're at Universal Music Group, and then they're back at Columbia. Like, I don't understand how it works, and at this point I just don't bother trying. Big Time Rush was one of the main like Nickelodeon shows on the cable network to partner with this music group to produce original music for the show and also to promote the show as well. The show is filmed as a single cam show compared to many other sitcoms at the time. So other sitcoms like iCarly, Victoria, they were multicam. Networks prefer multicam because multicams are almost like the 9 to 5 jobs of like the entertainment industry. And so since many actors are under the age of 18, they work less hours than an adult because of laws and all of that. So most of the time, yeah, kids shows will opt for the multicam, but for Big Time Rush, it's a single cam. So usually with single cams, they take like twice as long to film. Like, you're filming 12 hours a day. And so that's why like these guys, like when they started the show, they were 18 years old. Like, they were all like of legal age to be on a set for 12 hours and film for 12 hours. So yeah, that's sort of how Big Time Rush is set up. And because it's not multicam, there's no laugh track, but it's replaced with a bunch of music and sound effects and just like a lot of just auditory signals. This show, I'm pretty sure, is the reason why I could not pay attention in class as a kid, because I was so overstimulated watching these types of shows. If there wasn't a sound effect every 5 seconds in my math class, it's like I'm not learning anything. So this show is the reason why I was so overstimulated as a kid. That's why I did so bad in school. As I started rewatching the show, I started wondering like who the demographic for the show was actually supposed to be. Because obviously with the boy band concept and all that, you would think the demographic would be like 13 to 18-year-old, preteen, teenage girls, because, also like we're the main consumers of a lot of content anyways. So that made like the most sense. But then you're watching the show and the humor is like 11 to 13-year-old boy humor. It's just like a lot of physical fight scenes. There's a lot of fart poop jokes and all of that. And so I was just like wondering, I was like, who was this show actually made for? But then as I started thinking about it further, I realized it was me. I was the target demographic. Like, I watched a show when I was 10, 11 years old. At that age, I was literally like watching 10, 11-year-old boy humor shows as well. I think they hit their target audience. Like, it was me. It was just me. It was also obvious that this show was one of the shows that Nickelodeon tried to rival Disney with. I believe around this time, the Jonas Brothers show had been airing on Disney. Big Time Rush might have been like the rival show to that on the Nickelodeon network. But at the same time, honestly, I think Disney just had their formula down. Their marketing was so much better. They knew exactly sort of how to transition from like a show to music kind of thing. Big Time Rush was definitely an attempt for Nickelodeon to like see if they could create a successful like boy group. And honestly, I think they were pretty successful, like just given the times. And like since I'm talking about them in 2024, I would say they're still like pretty successful. Big Time Rush aired when boy bands weren't as popular like as they were in the 80s and 90s, like with groups like NSYNC, Backstreet Boys, New Kids on the Block, etc. Like during like the 2000s, 2010s and all that, there was kind of like this lull period. There was nothing boy band related, or like there weren't boy bands like that were actually like becoming popular. There became a reemergence. Obviously, there was like Big Time Rush and then One Direction and then the Five Sauce. Now there's like a reemergence of the boy band because of K-pop, like mostly because of BTS. I am an ARMY, by the way. Like when Big Time Rush aired, the only group that could possibly rival Big Time Rush would have been the Jonas Brothers. And I think they both like lasted around the same time, and then they both like took a long hiatus, and now they're both back. I think the difference is also that like Big Time Rush, it originally started off just as a show, and then Nickelodeon was like, okay, let's see if they're marketable enough to actually like become a group, make the music, promote the music, go on tours and all of that, like create good concerts. It took them like 2 years to cast the show though. Like the original casting started in 2007, and then they casted it, filmed a pilot, and then they were like, you know what, we're going to make some changes. And then it took them another year to make all the changes, and then they refilmed the pilot again, and the show finally began in 2009. Now, let's talk about the unaired pilot. So, in 2007, they casted the actors. These are such um, screenshots, by the way, but they casted the actors Logan Henderson, James Maslow, Carlos Pina, and Kurt Hansen. And they pretty much filmed this unaired pilot called The Audition. And some clips can be found on YouTube. Someone leaked it on YouTube. That's where these screenshots come from. This is the quality you're going to be watching the unaired clips in. I think this episode kind of worked as like the network test for the show, because this pilot is very similar to the one that was actually broadcasted on Nickelodeon, but it also differs in a couple ways. After watching this pilot, you can see why Nickelodeon had to rework some things. Nickelodeon was still figuring out sort of what they wanted this show to be, but the major difference is that they recasted one of the main characters. So in the unaired pilot, they casted Kurt Hansen, who plays the sort of main guy of the show. This is Kurt Hansen, by the way. This is him. I think Nickelodeon casted Kurt Hansen because he gave off very much Zac Efron vibes. Like watching the pilot, you can tell that like his character it's very much like Troy Bolton-esque. Even his voice sounds very similar to Zac Efron's and like Drew Seeley's and all of that. I think they realized there was a lot that wasn't working. Kurt Hansen, he's a really talented guy. Like, don't get me wrong, but I think for his character, they really needed someone who could give off leading man energy, someone who was very much believable as a leader type role and also kind of had this edge to them. It wasn't giving that energy. It was kind of giving theater kid going out to audition for Troy Bolton. Kurt Hansen was replaced with the actor Kendall Schmidt, and I think the recast just worked a lot better for the show. After they recasted Kurt, they refilmed the pilot, and this is the one that was broadcasted like on the network. But don't forget about Kurt. Don't forget about Kurt just yet. So now let's talk about the pilot. Big Time Audition is the title of the pilot for Big Time Rush, and it was first broadcasted on Nickelodeon November 28th, 2009. And this is an hour-long pilot, which is like something you don't normally get now from kids shows. I would say the pilot for the Big Time Rush like show is genuinely a good one. Like, is it bold of me to say that it is a perfect pilot? Yes, absolutely, but I'm going to say it anyways. Like for a kid show, I think this is a perfect pilot. Back in 2009, I think there were two perfect pilots that were released on cable network. The first one being Big Time Rush, and the second one being Glee. Glee was also released in 2009. And what do these shows have in common? They're all about music. Both of them perfect pilots, perfect setups for their shows. And yeah, so like I would say the pilot is really good. Like, is it cheesy? Oh yeah, absolutely. But at the same time, this pilot almost feels like it was filmed as a Nickelodeon movie. The sound effects are much more minimal, and there's more so of a pause between like the seriousness of some things versus like the comedy of things. And it's very much balanced, I would say. Don't get used to it because like the show turns into something else completely. The guys just had like a really good, fun dynamic, and like they were pretty much believable as friends. Were they believable as hockey players? That's debatable. I feel like there's only one character that actually makes me believe that he could be a hockey player. Let's get started with this episode recap. The episode starts with a cold open, and we meet Kendall Knight, Carlos Garcia, Logan Mitchell and James Diamond, and they are pretty much at school in Duluth, Minnesota, and they have to flee from the girls' field hockey team after they unblock a nearby sprinkler that pretty much soaks the girls at their practice after school. They're pretty much chased until they reach a dead end and they get beaten up by the girls' field hockey team. Meanwhile, also in Minnesota, Hollywood mega producer Gustavo Rock and his assistant Kelly Wainwright are at their local Paramount Theater holding auditions to help Gustavo find a canvas with great hair that he can paint his pop on, meaning he's trying to find the next big star. We then return back to the boys at Kendall's house where they're nursing their wounds from being beaten up by the girls' field hockey team, and they're watching the Pussycat Dolls music video. When I grow up, I want to be famous, I want to be a star, I want to be in movies. James is pretty much voicing his plans that he's going to marry Nicole Scherzinger, and he vainly boasts that he's super talented and he deserves to be a pop star and he's destined to be in Hollywood. I have no clue if kids born after 2004 know who Nicole Scherzinger is or the Pussycat Dolls. They're watching the music video when all of a sudden, conveniently timed television advertisement tells them that Gustavo Rock is holding auditions and the auditions end at 5 o'clock, which is half an hour from now. So, wanting to help James make his dream come true, the boys desperately find a way to get to the audition. So they ask their neighbor, Mrs. Majikowski, if they can use her car and come with them because Logan has a learner's permit. So this kind of establishes that they're around 15 years old in this pilot. Their ages kind of drive me insane in this show, so I'll talk about that later. They hurry her to her car so they can get to the auditions. A bunch of people from Minnesota tried to showcase their talents, and none of them are talented, and Gustavo just chews them out the entire time. I just hate audition scenes now because I think Pitch Perfect literally is a standard for now audition scenes. If I'm not getting a Pitch Perfect Since You've Been Gone montage type of thing, I don't want to see it. The boys show up to the auditions with only a minute to spare, and they scramble into the waiting room where they meet Kelly. Kelly slaps numbers on all the boys, so now they all have to audition for Gustavo Rock. The first person to go is Logan, and he can't sing, so he decides to beatbox for Gustavo instead. He returns horrified, which scares an already nervous James. The next character that goes is Carlos, and he gives us the first fart joke of the season. Definitely not going to be the last. Finally, it is James's turn to go in, and Kendall pretty much gives him a whole pep talk and says that opportunities like this only come once in a lifetime. And he tells his friend that he's just do your best and you're going to be great. So James takes the stage. Kendall and the other guys and Mrs. Machikowski end up sneaking in. James gets up and he starts singing, and this man is doing really well. And you can see that he actually has talent and can sing, but he cracks under the pressure after Gustavo glaringly stares at him. James messes up and Gustavo pretty much berates him, and this causes Kendall to get mad at Gustavo and stand up for his friend. He approaches Gustavo and he just starts to criticize the producer. He's just you haven't even had a hit in 10 years. Who are you to say who's talented enough? Then he jumps onto the judges table and starts mocking his boy band songs and pretty much dances until security pulls him away. He also creates the giant turd song, which you will hear multiple times throughout the show. Watching the scene makes me wonder, what would have happened if this show was actually created for adults instead of children? Just putting it out there. The boys and Mrs. Majikowski get into a fight with security. This causes the group to become arrested, and they are driven back to Kendall's house. We meet Mrs. Knight, Kendall's mom, and Katie, his little sister. In the scene, she just kind of lets it go, and then Katie's just what do you mean you're not going to slap some sense into them? And then also in the scene, Kendall's mom, she drops that Katie isn't allowed to watch Fox anymore. The amount of actual name dropping of and references to American culture in this pilot is kind of funny to me because like after this, like every single brand, every single network, every single thing is like changed for Nickelodeon. The relaxation at the house is short-lived after Gustavo and Kelly show up. Everyone is confused as to why they're here, and Gustavo pretty much offers to take Kendall and his family out to Los Angeles so Kendall can record some demos for him and impress these labels higher ups. So he wants to make Kendall the new Hollywood pop star kind of thing. And he's just like, we can cover all of your expenses for your families and you can get, fame and fortune from this. And then Kendall responds with, no. He's just like, I would rather pursue my dreams of being a hockey player and also be with my friends than to go to Hollywood with you. This angers Gustavo, and he angrily storms out of the house and breaks some things. And Kelly pretty much gives Kendall her card, and she's just like, well, if you change your mind, call me. And like, you're really good, Kendall. Like, you should reconsider this chance. Kendall is at work the next day, and he's hanging out with the boys. And pretty much the boys are telling him they're just like, you're an idiot. You should have taken the offer. Kendall being loyal and stubborn, he's just like, no, like I'd rather stay here in Minnesota with you guys. And then he asks them, he's just like, okay, if you were in my position, would you guys go to Hollywood? And they all respond, yes, we absolutely would. Carlos casually gets hit by a car in this scene. Like, obviously, like in this photo, you can tell it's a dummy, but like he just casually gets hit by a car. Kendall then reconsiders the offer and he decides to make a phone call. And a few minutes later, a white limousine pulls up and these two step out of the vehicle. So Kendall says to Gustavo, he's like, okay, I'll accept your offer, but on one condition. You make us a singing group. So instead of Kendall just being the pop star, he wants them to become a boy band. Gustavo is reluctant to bring all four of them, but he's just super desperate. So he's just like, fine, deal accepted. The four boys, Kendall's mom and his sister, are driven out to California. When they get there, Kelly shows them where they're going to be living, which is the local Palmwoods resort. I will give context to this place later. At the Palmwoods, they meet several people. So one of them is Camille and the other ones are the Jennifers. I'll give context to them later as well because they're not super important in this pilot. The boys decide to make a pact while they're at the Palmwoods. They're like, let's make sure Hollywood doesn't tempt us and change who we are and all of that. Obviously, it only lasts 10 minutes. They pretty much decide to arrogantly approach the Jennifers, only for them to receive smoothies in their faces. Then we're over at Rock Records, and Gustavo is visited by Arthur Griffin. And he is the CEO of the RCM CBT GlobalNet Sanoid Corporation, and they're the corporation that owns Rock Records. And pretty much they wield complete authority over Gustavo, and Griffin's kind of just like, what do you mean you're making a singing group? Like, I only gave you a chance to make one pop singer, The boys head over to Rock Records and they meet Nicole Scherzinger, just casually there. The guest stars on these Nickelodeon shows, like back in the 2000s, like they kind of slap, not gonna lie. Like, imagine getting Nicole Scherzinger for your pilot. They have a conversation with Gustavo, and Gustavo tells them they're now pressed for time because Griffin only gave him 3 days to turn this group of guys who have little to no music, singing, dancing experience whatsoever into now a promising boy band worth time and money for the label. Gustavo calls the boys to attend boot camp. There is a line of specialists ready to help work their magic on these boys and turn them into a manufactured kind of boy band. So there's the marketing team, there's the fashion stylist team, but my favorite is Mr. X, their choreographer. Not gonna lie, I think this might actually be JYP. Let me also tell you Mr. X's choreography history. He's choreographed for Madonna, Beyonce, and Yo Gabba Gabba. Mr. X unfortunately quits after an hour due to these guys just being horrible. Here is a quick guide to the members of Big Time Rush by Mr. X. So we have Kendall Knight. He is great, but not serious. James Diamond. He is serious, but not great. Carlos Garcia. He lost a pet when he was young, and he's still sad about it. And Logan Mitchell, he's just plain awful. For the marketing team and the stylist team, here are the possible boy band looks they could have gone for. So we have Boylicious, Danger Boy, and my personal favorite, Red, White, and Boy. As to why this market hasn't been tapped into yet, I don't know. Gustavo's contribution to their boy band is his new song, Girl Time, which is a ballad about how every day, every time, every single moment is girl time. There's this whole gag where pretty much it's in line with all of his other previous hits, which contain the word girl in the name, which Kendall is quick to mock. The only song that doesn't have the word girl that Gustavo has written is Yard Squirrel Christmas. The boys are restless after a long day and they haven't had a break. And Kelly's just like, okay, like we should give them a break. Otherwise, they're going to explode. And Gustavo doesn't listen and he orders them into the recording booth. They get into a fight with the pillows and sports drinks. And after they're done, Gustavo pretty much chews them out. And he's just like, your band is dead, and he fires them. The boys then head back to the Palm Woods, and Katie's just like, you guys got fired, right? And these guys get depressed, and then they end up getting into a fight with each other until Katie pushes them into the pool, and pretty much it snaps them back to reality, and it makes them realize, like, what the Hollywood dream is doing to their friendship. That night, the boys mope around the campfire, and then to lighten the mood, they start singing the Giant Turd song that Kendall wrote. When they finish, they're surprised to learn that everyone at the Palmwood starts to clap for them. And they're just like, maybe we're not so bad as a band to begin with. The boys realize that, like, they're only the best when they're being themselves together. And they realize how much they love singing. And Kendall recounts his speech from earlier, like the pep talk he gave James. And because of copyright, I can't play the scene, but I will try to recreate the way Kendall says the speech in the show. We are hockey players, brothers of the ice, and we do not quit. Now, are we going to dump the puck and scramble back to the bench? Or are we going to grab that puck, pull the goalie, and rush the net big time? I realized 3 things since we got here. 1, I love singing. 2, I love singing with you guys. And opportunities like this come once in a lifetime. And 3, it's -8 in Minnesota right now, and I'm in love with this pool. So, what's the play? Dump the puck or big time rush? The boys return back to Rock Records the following morning, and they pretty much apologize to Gustavo. They're just like, okay, we will work hard under your orders, but we have one condition. Instead of singing Girl Time, we sing a song called Big Time Rush. Oh. Cute training montage. So the band works relentlessly for the next 2 days. They have training both at the studio and at the pool, pretty much whenever they get free time. They perform the Friday afternoon in front of Griffin, and they sing the song Big Time Rush. I feel like everyone knows the song, whether or not you know who the band is. Certified banger.
Go on, shake it up, what you gotta lose. Go and make your luck with the life you choose. If you want it all, lay it on the line. It's the only life you got, so you gotta live it big time.
After their performance, Griffin decides to greenlight the project and gives them an additional 3 months to develop this boy band. The boys celebrate, but Gustavo interrupts them, and he's just like, the next 3 months are going to be even harder than these past 3 days. He says, Carlos still can't sing, Logan still can't dance, and I still can't stand James. Kendall's just like, we'll work on it, don't worry. And yeah, so side by side as friends, Big Time Rush promise to give it their best. And the musical journey begins. That was the pilot for the show. Now let's talk about the settings of the show. Obviously, the show takes place in LA if we haven't established from the pilot already. For the first season, at least, they mostly take place at the Palm Woods Resort and Rock Records. Those are the main two sets they have, and they're usually there the entire time. They usually aren't filming outside of those sets unless it's for like a special reason. For most of the episodes take place on the either the Palm Woods set or the Rock Records set. Let's first talk about the Palm Woods. So the Palm Woods is actually a parody of an actual apartment complex in LA called the Oakwoods, or it was called the Oakwoods. I have no idea if they changed the name or not. Back in like the 2000s at least, like it was very much notable. It was a notable place where like young actors and actresses would stay when they were working in Hollywood or in LA, because it's like near all of like the film studios and all of that, and the filming sets and locations. So most actors that didn't grow up like in LA and all that, or had to travel to work in LA, there is always a story about them at the Oakwoods. So let's just leave it there. At the Palm Woods, there are a couple of sets. The first one is apartment 2J, which is Big Time Rush's apartment. And I feel like most people have probably seen this set, but yeah, I'll give more on this later because there's a specific episode on this. The next one is the Palm Woods pool. It's actually crazy to me how like realistic this set looked like when I was watching this as a kid. Like I was genuinely convinced that this hotel was a real thing. For the set, they literally dug a pool, like an actual real like usable pool at like Paramount Studios or whatever. Like this used to just be like a concrete floor, and then they decided to just dig a pool for the show. The final set we have is the lobby at the Palm Woods. So most of the time the scenes are filmed at these three places at the Palm Woods. Sometimes like they'll have like hallway sets. There's the apartment, the pool, and the lobby that are the main Palm Woods sets. And the rules of the Palm Woods are no bloodshed, no partying, no loud music, no ball playing, no pool parties, no playing hockey in the lobby, no stealing from the snack machine, no karate in the lobby, no loitering in the lobby after 9 p.m., and be good and have a good time here. Then for Rock Records, the Rock Record sets, I just couldn't find good pictures anyways, but you'll see tons of pictures later on. There's like the waiting room, lounging area. Then there's like 2 recording studios and like a dance studio, and then Gustavo's office. So like you'll see them when I show them in future episodes. Now let's talk about the characters in the show. I'm going to be talking about main characters and also like secondary characters and recurring characters that actually have an impact on the show. So it's like if a recurring character only shows up for like 2 episodes, I'm not going to be talking about them in this section. I'll talk about them when like they appear in the episode. Let's get started with the character. So the first character we have is Mr. Kendall Knight, and he in the show, he is the appointed leader of the band. And in the show, I would consider him, most people would consider him to be the main character out of all of the characters in the shows. Like most of the show revolves around Kendall. Like out of the 4 boys and all that, most of the show revolves around him. So like most episodes he gets the A plot of the show, and he's pretty much portrayed as like the guy who is the total package. He has looks, he can sing, he can dance, he can pretty much do anything, and he's very strong-headed and rebellious, and he's also the glue that kind of keeps the band together. So he manages to stay cool and like calm under pressure, and like can figure out solutions to their problems, and he's also considered the most mature. Collectively in this show, the boys share a brain cell, and that singular brain cell belongs to Kendall. So with that being said, if the plot in the show has like the other boys in it but doesn't have Kendall in it, usually the quality of the plot goes down because the writers genuinely had no idea what to do with them. If Kendall's singular brain cell doesn't work, it is usually a secondary character that will have to step in and use their brain cell. Also, on a side note, so the actor Kendall Schmidt, in real life, he's the youngest member of this band. I was watching a Big Time Rush video. I don't remember what, but I was watching a video and I was looking through the comments, and someone commented on the video that Kendall was the golden matinee of Big Time Rush. Stop that right now. No, we are not bringing K-pop terms into Western boy bands. If you don't know what golden matinee is youngest in Korean. Most of the time with like K-pop groups and all that, if there's like a youngest member who's pretty much good at everything, like Jungkook of BTS, they are labeled golden maknae. So someone said that Kendall is a golden maknae, big time. The next character we have is James Diamond, and James is in the show. He's known as like the prettiest of the group. He's the vainness. He has a very vain obsession with himself, and he really loves his hair. And sometimes he can also be seen as like a narcissist and all of that. But usually it's for like the humor of the show. He's also very self-aware that he's like, he knows he's a good singer, he knows he's a good dancer, and like he knows he can also get all the girls, but overall he's like really loyal to his friends. It just takes him a while to get there. Next person we have is Carlos Garcia, and Carlos is pretty much portrayed as the very excitable, young, fun-loving, goofy member of the band. He's pretty much loves anything to that has to do with like having fun, and he also very like much enjoys childish activities like going down a swirly slide. And he has this whole thing that he's obsessed with wearing his hockey helmet, and he loves eating corn dogs. Corn dogs are his favorite food. And yeah, he's portrayed as also like the youngest, shortest, and most like immature of the group, but he's also like very loyal to anyone he considers a friend. The last member and last of the four boys is Mr. Logan Mitchell, and he is considered like the studious one, the genius, and all that of the group. He's really smart and he can find ways to solve problems, but he tends to panic under pressure. So, like, he's usually made fun of for being really nerdy and all of that. And there's this running gag throughout the show that people think he's the one most likely to get kicked out of the group. He also has like an on again, off again relationship with Camille. I would consider like Logan, he has like half a brain cell. Like, if Kendall's brain cell is not working, his brain cell will be the one that is working half of the time, but not not fully. Like, he's really book smart, but when it comes to like street smarts, he's like no bueno. The next character we have is Katie Knight, and like this is kind of going into the secondary supporting characters. Katie is Kendall's little sister, and when she's introduced, I believe she's in like the 5th or 6th grade, and this girly, Miss Girly right here, she is the OG girl boss, okay? Like, I'm not even over exaggerating about this either. Like, she is intelligent, she is mischievous, she's a troublemaker. And during this whole show, she pretty much just tries to find different ways to become rich. And like, as she should. And if it has to like do with profiting off of her brother's band, I would too. Katie usually gets the B plot or C plot. So like when she's in a plot with the guys, Katie is definitely the fully functioning brain cell. Like, if her and Kendall are in a scene together, she's the one that is using her brain cell the most. The next character we have is Mrs. Knight. We actually don't learn her first name until like later on in this second season. Kendall's mom, and she's just kind of serves as like the parental guardian in the show. Like, she's usually clueless most of the time on like what's actually happening with the boys and all of that, but she's also very clever, she's very pleasant, she's, you know, kind of fun, and she's pretty much there to just like give advice the entire time. The next character we have is Gustavo Rock, and Gustavo is technically a main character along with like Katie and all that. Katie's also a main character, but yeah, he's the music producer and founder of Rock Records, and he's most notable for like creating boy bands in the 90s and all of that, like Boy Quake and Boys in the Attic. In the 2000s, he falls off. Like, he's not charting on the Hot 100, like Billboard albums, nothing. He hasn't had a hit single in over 9 years. And so yeah, like in the show, he's practically there like to yell at the boys in a very like comedic way, like not in like a harsh, you know, sort of like traumatic. It's in a very comedic way because the boys are very rebellious and they don't listen to him anyways. So yeah, it's like he can come off as like abrasive and rude, but like at the end of the day, he like holds a lot of respect and care for the boys. He just doesn't know how to show it. The next character we have is Miss Kelly Wainwright. She's a recurring character in the first season, but then she gets bumped up to a main character in the second season. And she's pretty much Gustavo's assistant and talent scout. And I would say like she is such an underappreciated character. I just don't see a lot of people talking about Kelly, and she's one of the only Black characters that's like on the show, which I find interesting considering Big Time Rush's music is very much based off of R&B, pop, and hip hop. She is pretty much the opposite of Gustavo. She is very even-tempered. She's very friendly. She's very nice. And normally in the show, she is the voice of reason when like the boys are getting themselves into different situations, or Gustavo's getting himself into a situation. And yeah, she also is one of the characters that has a fully functioning brain cell. She shows that like she truly cares about the boys and like always has something nice to say about them, even though she knows they're probably going to get into trouble. And but like she's also not afraid to put people in their places. And we also learn throughout the show that she is a horrible liar. Moving on to more recurring characters in the show. So the first one we have is Camille Roberts, and she's played by Erin Sanders. And I feel like most of you guys would know who she is, like if you watch like Zoe 101. Anyway, she plays Quinn Pensky in Zoe 101. Camille is the method actress at the Palmwoods. And so she's usually the person that the boys go to, like when they need help with a scheme and all of that, because they just use her acting skills. And I didn't realize how much of a role Camille played in this show until I started rewatching this again. Like she's in almost every episode from like season 1 to season 4. I didn't realize how much of a role she played in this show until rewatching it. When I watched the show for the first time, I don't really think I understood what a method actress was, so I didn't appreciate her character as much. But like now, as I'm rewatching the show, I'm just like, she's actually a pretty cool character. She's a pretty fun character. The next recurring characters we have are the Jennifers. So the Jennifers are the show's take on sort of like the plastics from Mean Girls. They're all named Jennifer, and they're all kind of snooty and mean, and they're all pretty much like actresses. They usually are a part of Big Time Rush's schemes and plans, but only if there's something in it for them. So Jennifer number 1 is the brunette. Jennifer number 2 is the blonde one, and Jennifer number 3 is the biracial one. And Jennifer number 4 is technically Kendall's mom. So yeah, if you forget anyone's name while I'm recapping this, just assume that their name is Jennifer, and you'll probably be right most of the time. Blonde Jennifer gets recast like not even in the second season, like a couple episodes like in the first season at least. Like it's also not really acknowledged for the recast. Like I don't know if like the other girl had like another project she was working on, so she had to get out of her contract, or if like things just weren't working on the set or whatever. But honestly, I remember this Jennifer way more than the first one. I forgot that they recasted the role because I just remember seeing her a lot. And like I don't mean this in an offensive way either, but she gave more Nickelodeon vibes, if that makes sense. The way she delivers her lines and the way like she kind of acts and all of that just gives off very much like Big Time Rush, like Nickelodeon vibes kind of thing. But yeah, it's like the Jennifers aren't my favorite characters. Like sometimes I question like why they've been in the show for so long, because like they're in all 4 seasons of the show. But yeah, it's like they're kind of integral to the series, so I have to mention them. The next person we have is Griffin. And yeah, so Griffin is the CEO of the RCM CBT Global Net Sanoid Corporation. And yeah, so his company pretty much owns Rock Records, so he is Gustavo's boss. And he's very demanding. He doesn't like giving into anything, and he prefers things that are done his way. So obviously like stereotypical CEO vibes, you know? But he's also like kind of eccentric, like, and he's slightly childish. And yeah, like sometimes his humor is like very cheesy and he acts very cheesy, but like that's what makes him a fun character, is that like he's not necessarily like evil villain vibes, like silly goofy little like villain vibes, you know. There are times where like he can definitely come off as an antagonist, but then like and one thing about him is he enjoys any type of drama there is as well. So like he's so relatable in that sense. The next character we have is Mr. Bitters, and I genuinely do not care for this character, but he shows up way more than I would like him to. Mr. Bitters is the harsh, money-loving manager of the Palmwoods, and I feel like this was this show's take on a Mr. Mosby from like The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody, you know? They needed a sort of manager that kind of kills the fun, right? And so, I don't know, I feel like he just shows up in too many episodes for my liking, and he's not even that likable or funny. He's just kind of like an antagonist, and like he's usually in the B plots with Katie, or like sometimes the other guys, but it's mostly Katie. And I don't know, he just like annoys me. Like nothing against the actor, but like this character just overstayed his welcome. Finally, we have the last recurring character, which is Mr. Buddha Bob, and he is the groundskeeper and janitor at the Palmwoods. And again, this was the show's take of like an Arwen from The Sweet Life of Zack and Cody. Like despite his appearance, like he's really kind and he's like not very intelligent and he's usually clueless about what people are asking of him. He usually has a plot with Katie and or like Mrs. Knight type of thing. And fun fact, like this actor, he's actually like a really famous voice actor and all that. Didn't realize how like many projects he worked on, but most people will know him as Cosmo from The Fairly Odd Parents. Okay, now we are talking about all of the episodes from season 1. For the most part, I will just be telling you the A plots, some of the B plots if it's like really necessary. The first season of Big Time Rush premiered on Nickelodeon on November 28th, 2009, all the way to August 20th, 2010, and there are a total of 18 episodes. There's a quota, I'm pretty sure, in like this whole show where there has to be at least one physical fight and one Kendall speech per episode. Is called Big Time School of Rock. And obviously, this title is a parody of the 2003 American comedy movie School of Rock featuring Jack Black and Miranda Cosgrove, who later appears on the show. So, pretty much in this episode, Kendall, James, Carlos, and Logan learn that they still have to complete schooling while they're out in Los Angeles, according to the Actors, Singers, Performers Association guidelines. At the Palmwoods, most of the young actors and actresses go to school there, but they are frustrated to learn that Gustavo will not allow them to attend this school. Fun fact, the actress that plays the teacher at the Palmwoods is none other than voice actor queen herself, Mrs. Tara Strong. Most of her notable works include Raven from Teen Titans and Timmy Turner from Fairly Odd Parents. Gustavo forces the boys to attend his own School of Rock, which is taking place in a supply closet. And pretty much this whole episode, the boys set out to thwart Gustavo's plans and pretty much live out their fantasies at the Palmwood School. At the School of Rock, the first teacher they get is Mr. Smitty, and he's pretty much this bitter boy band reject, and he continuously interrupts their math lessons to scream about them how Big Time Rush's dreams are going to get crushed. Fun fact, the actor that plays Mr. Smitty is none other than D. Bradley Baker, aka Perry the Platypus. This show was just collecting voice actors at this point. The boys successfully get rid of Mr. Smitty, and then pretty much Gustavo keeps replacing the teachers, and they keep finding ways to pretty much get rid of all these teachers. They finally come up with a plan to convince Gustavo to let them go to the Palmwood School. In the B plot, Katie is also trying to find a way to get into the Palmwood School because she doesn't want to be homeschooled by Jennifer. So in order for her to attend the Palmwood School, however, she has to be a part of the Actors, Singers, Performers Association Union. So pretty much this whole episode, she's trying to book a commercial, and she ends up booking a Suds-O commercial. This allows Katie to finally attend the Palmwood School now that she's part of the union. And so Katie joins the boys on the first day of classes. And like, no wonder Katie is so smart, because she's supposed to be in the fifth, sixth grade, and these guys are supposed to be juniors in high school, and they're all attending the same class. The boys show up to class the next day, and they jump and pull out water soakers and start spraying everyone, thinking that school is going to be a party every day, which this is not the case. They end up getting detention at the end of the episode. The next episode we have is Big Time Crib. This one is pretty much about their apartment at the Palmwoods. After a long day at the studio, the boys return to their stained, smelly apartment at the Palmwoods, and they pretty much complain to Bitters and say, like, why can't we get a nice apartment? But Bitters refuses to let them move out of this apartment, and he also doesn't let them decorate or personalize their existing apartment because of their lease. In the scenes, Bitters references like actual like real life celebrities. So he says like there's a chocolate milk stain from Lindsay Lohan. The hole in the wall is caused by a Shia LaBeouf indoor soccer game, and the old CRT television has been once been enjoyed by little Kanye West. The next day, when they head to Rock Records, they coincidentally get a presentation from the RCM CBT GlobalNet Sanoid marketing team, and they present this concept illustration of a ultimate teen crib, which is complete with toys, arcade games, an indoor swirly slide. And they explain that this is going to be a set for a promotional video that Big Time Rush will be starring in and promoting and endorsing other like RCM, CBT, GlobalNet, Sanoid products. This crib design has left an impression on the boys. They decide to devise a plan to convince the construction workers to build the set in their apartment instead of the studio. With the help of Camille, they deliver fake orders to the workers, so they now move the studio building to their apartment. And then Katie comes up with a plan on how they can keep Gustavo away and also Bitters away, and pretty much everyone from figuring out what their plans are. The next day, they pretty much work to distract Gustavo, Kelly, Bitters, and all that from their plans and their apartment. And they actually successfully do. Kelly realizes that the set is not at Rock Records where it's supposed to be, and she alerts Gustavo. And they pretty much learn that the set is an apartment 2J. They don't have time to move anything back to Rock Records. They have to film the video in the apartment instead. When they are finished filming, the crew takes everything down from the set and their new crib is demolished. The next day at Rock Records, they present the video to Fujizaki. I think he's the founder or something. Gustavo becomes happy and he admits to Kelly that Big Time Rush are different than a lot of the other boy bands he's worked with, and he reluctantly decides to do something nice for them. The boys return home to their apartment and they find Katie and Mrs. Knight hanging out at the reinstated Ultra Teen crib. Thanks to a generous check from Gustavo, Bitters lets them keep the apartment. Next episode is titled Big Time Bad Boy. In this episode, Gustavo and Griffin think that the band needs a bad boy, so Gustavo designates Kendall for that specific role. Kendall refuses because in order to be a bad boy, that means he has to turn his back on all of his friends, and Kendall, being the loyal friend he is, he's like, I'm not going to do that. However, the other guys want to take a turn at becoming a bad boy, but each of them fails. They're not good at it. Griffin decides to add the member Wayne to the band, and the boys immediately don't like Wayne because he's arrogant and pushy and rude, and they pretty much try to come up with a plan to kick him out of the band. However, this isn't possible because Wayne has a contract from Griffin that states that he has the rights to be in the front man of any band of his choosing. Ultimately, he chooses Big Time Rush and he tries to get Kendall kicked out of the group. The boys are at Rock Records, but Kendall's not there, and they are about to sing a new song written by Gustavo when all of a sudden Kendall comes into the studio dressed up as a bad boy and pretty much challenges Wayne to a bad boy off. So Kendall starts to win the bad boy off, and Wayne is desperate to prove that he is better than Kendall, but he goes too far and he kicks Griffin in the groin. And so Griffin throws Wayne out of the band, and he says that Wayne has to be in a band, but it's in any band of Griffin's choosing, not Wayne's choosing. It is then revealed that Big Time Rush and Gustavo worked together to get rid of Wayne and didn't tell Kelly because Kelly is a horrible liar. In the B plot, Mrs. Knight is trying to get Katie to make some friends and befriend this girl named Molly. And Katie's just like, Molly looks kind of creepy and she doesn't want to hang out with her. And okay, a whole thing about Katie's like plots and all that is that Katie never actually has a friend her own age, like in the show. Like there'll be some that like they'll maybe show up for like maybe in one episode, but Katie never has like friends or like hangs out with people her own age. Like she's usually hanging out with the adults at the Palm Woods, which I find super weird. I mean, I think it was just mostly due to the fact that like they didn't want to hire like another kid on the set because like remember like kids can't work like the same amount of hours that adults can, so like they already had limited time with Sierra Bravo. At the end of the episode, the boys come back and they see that Wayne Wayne is performing with a children's group called the Ziggle Zaggles. I forgot to include a screenshot in this presentation, but whatever. And pretty much they switch to the news channel and they see Molly on the television. And it turns out that Molly is actually a 20-year-old con artist who tries to apply for movie jobs in Hollywood and scams people and all of that. And it turns out that she stole Mrs. Knight's rental car. The next episode we have is Big Time Love Song. For this episode, Griffin wants Gustavo to write a slow love song, slow ballad for Big Time Rush's next song. But Gustavo can't seem to figure out how to make this song work. Meanwhile, at the Palmwoods, a new girl named Jo Taylor moves into the Palmwoods, and all of the boys in Big Time Rush are immediately interested in her. They pretty much fight over who's going to ask her out the entire episode. Another fun fact, in this episode, Camille has a Degrassi audition. Fun fact about Degrassi is that Degrassi is a Canadian show, and in order to audition for the show itself, you have to be a Canadian citizen. So I just find this reference super funny. Towards the end of the episode, Logan brings Guitar Dude out under Joe's apartment because her balcony overlooks the Palmwoods pool, and they start to sing the new song to Joe, but they continuously start to push each other and fight with each other, and they unintentionally make the song faster and faster. She tells them to stop singing, and she's just like, guys, that's a great song, but I have a boyfriend. And she's like, but we can all still be friends, right? And they're just like, yeah, I guess we can all be friends. While the guys were fighting, Gustavo was also there at the pool, and he realizes that the song has to be a fast, upbeat song, not a slow song. In the B plot, James gets an allergic reaction to this recalled body spray called Cuda, and Kelly's trying to force him to go get a shot. In the C plot, Katie has to do a report on someone she admires, so she just decides to choose Gustavo because he's an easy topic, and pretty much she watches him struggle to write his song the entire time, and pretty much he doesn't let her leave the studio until she writes a good report about him. And in the end, she does. At the end of the episode, the boys perform Gustavo's song, Any Type of Guy, and it is filmed with a music video. The song is, the faster paced love song, and Griffin ends up liking it, but he still wants Gustavo to write a slow song that has the word baby in it. The group usually performs 2 separate music videos, so they film one specifically for the show, and then they film one for YouTube. So for the show, they pretty much, in this music video, they're just dressing up in like different costumes and all of that as different types of guys. And then in the YouTube one, they really had a green screen, a couple Polaroids, and a dream. Yeah, and new character alert. We now are introduced to Jo Taylor, who becomes a bigger part in the series and all of that. If you didn't know this already, she later becomes Kendall's girlfriend. And yeah, she's usually there with the boys in their schemes, in their plot, or she's on like a cute little date or has a cute little plot with Kendall. When she's first introduced, like in this episode, it's very much she's like a typical girl crush. You don't know much about her other than like she's approachable and like all the guys kind of want to date her. But then as you start to like learn about her, she's very driven. She likes to put her career first and all of that, and she has her career goals. But at the same time, it's like she's also like, as a girlfriend, I would say she's kind of like almost like a female version of Kendall. Like they're both very similar. I think like she's a fun character. I really like Jo. The next episode we have is Big Time Mansion. In Big Time Mansion, Gustavo and Kelly are going to North Carolina to check out another boy group that Gustavo is possibly thinking of signing. Kelly convinces Gustavo to let Big Time Rush take care of his mansion while he's away. And in this scene, Mrs. Knight doesn't agree with them taking care of it, and Kendall responds that he's 16 years old, so he's old enough. So that's what sort of establishes their age in the show. Gustavo tells the boys before he leaves there are 5 mansion sitting rules. First one is stay out of Gustavo's media room. Second one is do not open the living room fridge. The third one is do not sit on his $40,000 couch. Number 4 is do not touch his hairless cat from Peru named Monty. And number 5 is if anything is broken in his mansion, the 4 guys are fired from the label. In normal Big Time Rush show fashion, they break all the rules and destroy everything inside the mansion that Gustavo values. And so now they have to figure out a way to replace everything and fix everything up. The boys find out that Gustavo and Kelly are coming back early to LA. Kendall pretty much asks Mrs. Knight to help them clean up the mansion, and they pretty much do so in time for them to return. When Kelly and Gustavo are in North Carolina, Gustavo realizes that he actually cares about the Big Time Rush members. He likes it when they argue with him and get in his face. So they return back to the mansion to see the boys, and pretty much Gustavo tells the boys that he's proud of them and that he likes them. The next episode we have is Big Time Photo Shoot. In this episode, the episode starts off with the Big Time Rush members wounded in cast and like sitting by the pool, and Camille walks in and asks them like what happened to them. So they pretty much tell her the story that it started off as a normal day. They went to Rock Records to record some things, and when they enter, there is a whole photo shoot thing set up, and pretty much they're getting their picture taken for a poster for a magazine. Before the picture can get taken, Gustavo and Kelly are arrested by the police for destroying Matthew McConaughey's mailbox, so they have to do community service in this episode. The boys are about to take the picture when all of a sudden Griffin comes in and decides to control the photo shoot instead, but he has horrible ideas. Throughout the whole episode, the boys are trying to get away from Griffin and just take the photo themselves. In the B plot, Katie and her mom are trying to get the autograph of teen star Dak Zevon, which is played by Mr. Kurt Hansen. Zevon is also a Zac Efron parody, so that is why I also was bringing up that Troy Bolton stuff. Get it now? Dak is at Rock Records recording something for his new vampire basketball movie. After the security guards are mean to Katie, Mrs. Knight gathers Dak's fans and they try to barricade down the door to their recording room. And pretty much Katie helps him escape, and they end up in Gustavo's office. And when he thanks Katie, Katie accidentally screams his name. This causes a mob of fangirls to come running into Gustavo's office, where Big Time Rush are doing their photo shoot for the magazine, and Big Time Rush end up getting trampled by all of these fangirls, and then we come full circle back to the beginning of the episode. The next episode we have is Big Time Break, and this is the first episode where the four main guys finally have their own separate plots and storylines from each other. For most of the season, all four of them are with each other, and their plots are pretty much like all the same. This one, we actually get their different plots. The band is looking back at their first month in LA, and they start to realize that they're spending too much time together and they're all starting to hate each other. Gustavo decides to give them the day off because Gustavo is also hating all of them. Kendall spends time with Joe in hopes of him becoming Joe's boyfriend. Unfortunately, she still continues to mention that she has a boyfriend back at home, and Kendall is about to accept that fact until Katie overhears her talking on the phone, and she learns that Joe has been lying to Kendall, and Kendall spends the episode trying to force the truth out of Joe, and he manages to get the truth out of her at the end of the episode, and pretty much they have a little argument, and then they decide to go on a date. In James's plot, he enlists Camille as his acting coach, and they decide to go on to do an audition together and launch James's acting career. Logan is determined to get into this math lecture taught by his favorite math teacher named Phoebe Naki. And this math teacher is like a parody of Danica McKellar, who she was like a child actress, but then she also like did like a whole like PhD, I think, in math, or like a master's degree in math and all of that. And like, it's very math and numbers positive kind of thing. She's disappointed to find out that no boys are allowed in the school where it's taking place. And so, desperate to meet this teacher, Logan dresses up as a girl thanks to Mrs. Knight, and he manages to get into the lecture. Logan gets mad during the math lecture after she starts calling boys like stupid and all of that, and accidentally reveals that he's a boy, and then he gets beaten up by all of the girls in the lecture. In this show, there's like a whole running gag of like the guys dressing up as girls. This isn't going to be the first time you see the guys like dressing up as girls and all that. Like, it's mostly for humorous purposes. I'm not going to be the one to say like if what they're doing has aged well. In Carlos's plot, he loses his helmet, and then somehow his dad ends up in LA, and they're both trying to figure out where Carlos's helmet is. This is the only time we'll actually get a mention of like one of the Big Time Rush's like dads. We don't know anything about James's dad, Kendall's dad, or Logan's dad. He never comes back, so I'm not going to tell you anything other than he's a cop. The episode ends with them all having very eventful days that they can tell each other what happened. The next episode is called Big Time Demos. This episode starts with the band lounging by the pool. But then Kelly arrives and hands them plane tickets and says that if the record company doesn't choose their demo tomorrow, they all have to fly back to Minnesota. The boys are loving it in LA and they are desperate for their demo to get chosen. So they go to Gustavo. Gustavo tells them that the other 6 boy bands had 3 months to make a demo, which is picked by Griffin's secret demo chooser. And the main competition against Big Time Rush is this like vampire themed band called Vampira. While they're at Rock Records, Griffin's daughter named Mercedes appears, and she is the apparent demo chooser and walks in to pick up the demo. She's rude and very snooty. She realizes that the boys of the band are kind of hot, and so she says she wants to date all of them. She decides to date Kendall, then Carlos, and then tries to date Logan. And pretty much the boys go along with the whole dating her thing because they think that if they do so, she'll most likely pick their demo. Ultimately, she turns out to be a very horrible person, and the boys can't stand pretending to be her boyfriends anymore. Kendall being Kendall, he tells Mercedes off, and this ends up upsetting her. And she tells the group that their demo will not be picked, and she storms off angrily. Mercedes then reappears a couple minutes later, and she comes back crying and apologizes to the boys. She knows that she was being horrible and mean. She also reveals that she isn't the demo chooser. It is actually a chimp that chooses the demos. In Big Time Rush fashion, they kidnap the chimp in order to train it to clap when they hear their music. Obviously, this gets out of control and it doesn't work out and it turns into a mess, and Griffin appears and pretty much isn't impressed. The chimp chooses the Vampira album, but Mercedes quickly talks Griffin out of it and says that Big Time Rush is the better choice. Griffin then picks Big Time Rush's demo and promotes Mercedes to now be the next demo chooser. At the end of the episode, the boys perform the song Halfway There, and Halfway There is literally certified bop. Okay, like that's the Big Time Rush song that probably has been scratching my brain the most.
We're halfway there. We're looking good now. Nothing's gonna get in the way. We're halfway there, and looking back now, I never thought I'd ever say, we're halfway there.
Griffin allows the boys to stay in Los Angeles, and Gustavo pays for their apartment at the Palmwoods. The next episode is called Big Time Party. The boys learn that Gustavo is throwing a party to celebrate the band's album production. However, the boys find out that they are not invited to their own party. They want to throw a party at apartment 2J. However, Mrs. Knight doesn't allow them to because they've already gotten 2 warnings from bidders, and if they get another warning, they'll be kicked out of the Palmwoods. So instead of throwing a party, the boys decide to hold a get-together where they each get to invite 3 people to this little get-together. Carlos doesn't know who he should invite to the party, so he invites the first 3 people in his phone, and he accidentally invites all contacts, thinking that this is a person named Al Contacts. The social gathering gets out of control. Bitters knows that something is up, so he's trying to make his way to the party and find out where it is, but Kendall and Joe are tasked with pretty much stalling him and stopping him and throw him off his scent. James and Carlos manage to get everyone out of the apartment, but they move everyone to the pool, and Kendall is freaking out, and now Joe and him have to make sure that Bitters doesn't go to the pool. Logan is trying to date Mercedes and Camille at the same time because they've both fallen for him. The one with Mercedes is kind of forced because at the end of the previous episode, Griffin forces him to become Mercedes' boyfriend. Meanwhile, Camille just has a huge crush on Logan. So yeah, he's trying to date them both, and then they both discover that he's been dating them both. This is also the last episode we'll see Mercedes in, so yeah, like, you don't need to remember her. Kendall and Joe manage to get Bitters away from the party, and they trap him in the super party fun box. It turns out Gustavo's party is super bored and everyone is bored, and they learn that there's a party at the Palmwoods, so everyone moves to the Palmwoods and goes to their party instead, and pretty much the episode ends with everyone dancing and singing and, having fun at Big Time Rush's party. The next episode we have is called Big Time Jobs. The boys have been breaking things while having too much fun at the Palmwoods, so instead of Gustavo paying off all of their debts, Gustavo decides to teach the guys a lesson in that they all have to get jobs and pay off the $2,000 in damages that they've caused at the Palmwoods. Gustavo bans them from the pool until they come up with the money to pay for all of the damages. Carlos becomes Gustavo's production assistant, but he struggles to use Gustavo's new coffee machine at Rock Records. James attempts to become a model with Katie as his manager. However, he gets intimidated by all of the good-looking guys at all of these model auditions, and Toby from Pretty Little Liars shows up in this episode. He doesn't have a speaking role, but he's there. Kendall and Logan decide to start up a babysitting business, but it turns out that babysitting is harder than they thought it would be. They have enough money to pay for the $2,000 in damages, but with everything that they did to get this money, they end up accumulating even more damages, which totals up to $14,000. Gustavo gets enraged by this, and so he starts breaking things around Rock Records, only for Griffin to come in and for Griffin to teach Gustavo the same lesson that he was trying to teach Big Time Rush. The boys are forced to help Kelly Gustavo pay the money back, so they hold a car wash at the end of the episode. The next episode is Big Time Blogger. In this episode, the boys are pretty much doing their PR media training, and they are trying to impress this well-known blogger named Deke. His review controls their career and controls whether or not they are going to be successful as a band. By the time the interview comes, in the first 5 minutes of the interview, Deke writes a bad review about them because they are pretty much too PR media trained. He can tell that they are being fed with sound bites and all of this corporate talk, and he thinks that they're phonies. Throughout this whole episode, they're trying to figure out how they can change Deke's mind and all of that, but it starts to escalate when they lock him in the supply closet, and Deke has to escape through the vents, only for them to trap him in a recycling bin. Then they start to talk. They realize that they weren't being themselves the entire day, and that they were letting all these corporate people, sort of run their lives. And they're just like, we're not about that. And so they decide to let Deke go, and they're not happy about it. They think that he's going to post a negative review about them. The review goes up. The review starts off negative, but then it slowly turns positive as Deke actually had a fun day with Big Time Rush, even though they trapped him in a supply closet and locked him in a recycling bin. The gang celebrates this achievement. This next episode is Big Time Terror. The boys are singing at the Palmwoods near the pool, and they see a moving table or ghost table. And pretty much Carlos thinks that there's a ghost at the Palmwoods, and the other guys are trying to convince him that there isn't. Later that night, Gustavo shows up and he tells the boys that he has to stay with them because his mansion flooded. Gustavo ends up being a horrible house guest. The boys are not happy that he's staying with them. For the B plot, Logan and Carlos are trying to prove that there's a ghost at the Palmwoods and get rid of it. Meanwhile, Kendall and James are trying to get rid of Gustavo. Gustavo tells him that his mansion won't be unflooded for 5 more days, so he has to stay with them for 5 more days. And Kendall and James are not happy, so they're trying to figure out a way to make him leave the Palmwoods. Kelly arrives asking where Gustavo is the next day, and the boys are like, please get rid of him, like he's the worst guest ever. And Kelly's just like, his mansion has been unflooded. Like, he needs to go back and write this song. So now these guys have to figure out how they can get Gustavo to stop having fun and move back into his mansion. The boys realize that the only way that they can get rid of their problems is if they work together. So the first problem they tackle is the ghost problem. They realize that there isn't a ghost at the Palmwoods, but it's actually the new girl named Stephanie King, and she's trying to make a low budget horror film at the Palmwoods. The boys decide to work with Stephanie to scare Gustavo out of their apartment, and it works. After they scare Gustavo out of their apartment, they sing a song, and it's called A Shot in the Dark. And this song didn't get an official release on like the BTR album or anything like that. And honestly, I forgot that this song existed. I didn't realize the song even existed until I watched this episode. It's not my favorite Big Time Rush song. Big Time Rush did re-release this song. They re-recorded it and everything and put it on their album titled Afterlife. And it came out last year, and it's all their deluxe album. So if you like it, go ahead, check out their new re-released edition of it. I personally did not remember this at all. Next episode is Big Time Dance. It is the last day of school and at the Palmwoods, and usually they have a year-end party, and Camille reveals that the year-end party is really lame because they just have like bitters as entertainment, and it's just in this classroom. Kendall suggests that they have a fun party, and pretty much the teacher puts Big Time Rush as the dance committee. And so they have to figure out where this dance is going to be and all the plans for it. Gustavo allows the guys to have the dance at Rock Records as long as they perform in front of their classmates because they need the stage experience. Kendall and Katie have a plot in which they're trying to find their mom a date to the dance, and pretty much their mom tells them that she will only go to the dance with Italian model Fabio, who will appear multiple times throughout the show. If you don't know who Fabio is, like, this is a pretty like dated thing, I feel like. But pretty much Fabio is like this Italian model that has been he's pretty much been on hundreds at least of like romance novels and all of that. How they got him on a Nickelodeon show, don't really know. He arrives at their apartment and pretty much they trap him and they try to convince him to go to this dance with their mom. Carlos's plot, he's trying to ask one of the Jennifers to go with him, but instead they all decide to go with him and he has to pretend to be 3 different guys instead. For Logan's plot, pretty much James is trying to help Logan ask Camille. James accidentally asks 8 other girls out. Meanwhile, like, Logan can't even ask 1 girl out. Nothing works until Logan appears at the dance riding a horse, which is just Kendall and James as a horse. Camille finally says yes. Carlos is getting annoyed, pretending to be 3 different guys, so Stephanie asks him to dance, and he accepts. Meanwhile, with Joe and Kendall, Joe has been waiting all day for Kendall to ask her to the dance, and Kendall pretty much doesn't, and then at the dance, he asks her if he wants to dance, and she, like, is just like, I've been waiting all day for you to ask me, and then he just says, like, oh, I thought we were, like, together. Like, I assumed we were together. So this is, like, confirmation now that they're actually dating and like boyfriend and girlfriend. They also end up getting Fabio to attend the dance and dance with Kendall and Katie's mom. The guys perform the song Stuck. Their performance is successful, but the girls that James accidentally asked out chase him pretty much out at the end of the episode. Stuck is a bonus track on the Big Time Rush album. It's available on iTunes and Apple Music. I don't know if you can listen to it on other streaming platforms. I have Apple Music, so I can listen to most of their music and all that. They have like random bonus tracks and all of that, which I'll get to later. I'm not sure if you can listen to the song on other streaming platforms, though. The next episode we have is Big Time Sparks. In this episode, Jordan Sparks is recording a song at Rock Records. Gustavo warns the boys not to go near Jordan because he thinks that the boys are bad luck and something bad will happen to Jordan if they hang around her. Jordan is staying at the Palmwoods, and pretty much there's this whole plot where Bitters is trying to get Jordan to do something embarrassing so he can take a picture and sell it to the tabloids or whatever. Kendall is always around Jordan and he pretty much saves her from a lot of embarrassing moments. And then the running gag is that like Joe keeps walking in and seeing them in these like different romantic positions and all of that. There's a plot where like Gustavo's rival Hawk sends a skunk to Rock Records. Kelly and Gustavo are trying to get rid of the skunk this entire episode. James has a plot where he breaks a mirror and he thinks he's going to get 7 years of bad luck, so he's trying to find ways to undo it. Logan and Carlos are this like good luck squad or whatever, trying to protect Jordan from bad luck, and they're also trying to prove to Gustavo that they are not bad luck. There's this whole thing where James and Kendall accidentally hit Jordan with a horseshoe and she ends up falling into the well. The boys try to come up with plans to get Jordan out of the well, but they all end up falling into the well as well. When they're down in this well, they pretty much talk with Jordan and they pretty much help her figure out her song. The boys and Jordan end up getting out of this well after they call Gustavo's bodyguard named Freight Train to pull them out. Freight Train's been in a couple episodes in the season, but like he doesn't really have a huge role in it, so that's why I haven't included him. They get back to Rock Records, and pretty much Jordan says to Gustavo that the song needs to be a duet, and so she asks Big Time Rush to be a part of it. And yeah, so they sing the song Count on You, certified bop. I think like this is definitely like has always been one of my favorite songs on the album. The song is successful. The next episode we have is Big Time Fever. The episode begins with James being covered in this orange body spray tan, and Camille comments to the guys that James is getting a case of Hollywood fever, and pretty much the other boys in this episode try to cure James from his Hollywood fever, but the other boys slowly start to succumb to it. Carlos ends up becoming a Jennifer in this episode. Logan ends up becoming a hippie. Pretty much that leaves Kendall, Gustavo, and Kelly to cure these boys of Hollywood fever. However, nothing they're doing is working. After multiple attempts that don't work out, Kendall gets annoyed and he says that he's going to head to the hockey rink to clear his head. But once he says that, he, Kelly, and Gustavo realize that the reason why Kendall hasn't succumbed to Hollywood fever is because he's doing something that keeps him in touch with his roots, which is just playing hockey. So they learn that Hollywood fever is just another term for homesickness. In the B plot, Katie starts a snow cone business with Buddha Bob to help people at the Palmwoods Resort beat the heat because it's super hot out. Kendall pretty much works with Katie and Buddha Bob. He pretty much uses Buddha Bob's wood chipper to grind huge amounts of ice so they can arrange this huge snowball fight, and pretty much that gets the guys back normal and cures their Hollywood fever. The next episode we have is Big Time Video, and I think this one was my favorite episode as a kid. I remember watching this one a lot as a kid, and like rewatching this, I had such a fun time watching it. I was laughing a lot. The episode starts with Camille crying because she hasn't booked a role in a couple months, and so she has to leave the Palmwoods and go back to Connecticut. In order to help Camille stay in LA, they learn that they are filming a music video for their new song, and pretty much they say to Camille that they're going to try to help her get a role in their music video. They go to Gustavo, who is pretty much trying to find a director to film their music video because he got a big check for it, and they try to convince Gustavo to give Camille a role in this music video. However, Gustavo doesn't want to listen to them and denies them any creative input. As they're meeting with the directors, all of these directors are coming up with concepts that don't involve girls or don't involve roles for Camille. So the guys pretty much plan with each other that if a director doesn't have a good idea for them or doesn't have an idea that they want, they're going to try and dissuade Gustavo from that decision. There's one director that says like the city is Big Time Rush's and only theirs, so then they spin it so that Big Time Rush is the actual city itself. And then there's another one where like they're in a post-apocalyptic world, and so this is what they feed Gustavo with. The boys return to the Palmwoods. They haven't arrived with any good news with Camille, and they're still trying to figure out a way to get her into the music video. But then when they're at the Palmwoods, they accidentally offer roles to the Jennifers as well as Joe because they end up mistaking that they're all leaving the Palmwoods as well. And then they pretty much promise 17 other more people that they can have roles in their music video. So they're caught in this like web of lies. They decide to spin their lies even further, and they falsely say that their label wants the video to be directed by Big Time Rush. So they pretty much shoot this homemade music video using like a camcorder, and it is like the worst video ever. It is poorly received. It's so like, I don't know. Like even talking about this now, I'm just like, was a pretty good episode. It's a really bad video, and everyone's just like, what is actually what is going on? They tell everyone the truth. So pretty much wanting to appease everyone, including their friends, the boys team up with a video director that Gustavo denied, but they realize that they can use his concept for the video. Their plans to film this video includes stealing Bitter's car by pushing him into the trunk and locking him into the trunk. The next day at the video shoot, Big Time Rush pretty much steal the crew and they take them to the Palmwood so they can film the music video. The episode ends with the characters watching the music video for The City Is Ours. Certified banger. I think I really like this song just because I really like this episode as a kid. The music video in this show actually incorporates clips of the music video that they posted on YouTube. There are some differences, but for the most part, they're very similar music videos. Finally, we have the other 1 hour special and the season 1 finale, which is Big Time Concert. In this episode, it starts off with Time Rush getting prepared for their first CD release, as well as their tour that Gustavo is planning for them. They pretty much go through a rigorous training program where they have to wear dog cones, learn proper fan interaction, and are pretty much getting jumped by fans and all that, and they're trying to increase their stamina as well. They go through a lot of work, including being trained by Dax Zevon. Despite many obstacles, they end up passing their training at the end, and they pretty much perform at a mock concert. Things are looking good for them. They perform the song This Is Our Someday, but then all of a sudden Griffin comes in and tells them that he's canceling their CD release and their tour. So this is not their someday, unfortunately. He dashes the boys' dreams, and pretty much the boys have to go back to Minnesota, and Gustavo is now set to produce children's audiobooks. Before the boys leave, Kendall and Joe finally have their first kiss when she finds out that he's leaving, and this is kind of a whole thing where Joe and Kendall now have to do a goodbye kiss. So the boys return to Minnesota, and they pretty much decide to focus on other goals and go back to their pre-fame lives. Logan is working on his dream to become a doctor. Kendall wants to become a hockey player, and Carlos is an unnamed superhero. James, his dreams was being famous, and he gets mad at the other boys because they gave up so easily on becoming a band, and so he stops talking to them. He's riding his bike around Minnesota when all of a sudden he gets hit by Hawk's car, and he pretty much gets an offer to become Hawk's new pop star. James moves back to LA, and he moves back into their old apartment. However, he realizes at Hawk Records he wants to use an AI version of James's voice, and also gives him fake lips. Remember, this was back in 2009. This was before AI was even a thing, and this was also before the whole huge lip fad happening. Big Time Rush was kind of ahead of their time in this episode. Kelly convinces Gustavo to sell all of his assets and buy back Big Time Rush from Griffin. So they then travel to Minnesota and convince Kendall and the rest of the guys to fly back to LA and, give them a second chance at being a band, which they reluctantly accept. They soon realize that James has already left for LA with Hawk. So they all scur to LA, and they go to the Palmwoods to talk to James. And pretty much they try to convince James to come back to Big Time Rush, and James is like, no, you guys gave up so easily on our dream. Why would I come back to this band? So they relay this to Gustavo, and Gustavo's like, well, if we can't get James to come back, we'll find a replacement for him. Kendall, Carlos, and Logan and Gustavo are trying to find James's replacement. However, in the same pilot audition fashion, no one is good enough to replace James. So after many bad auditions, Gustavo just decides that they'll be a trio instead. James ends up becoming bored just being alone by himself, even though he has an assistant named Sebastian who pretty much does everything for him. And pretty much Sebastian decides to remind James about his success with his friends and the band and all of that, and it makes him realize how much Kendall, Carlos, and Logan mean to him. Back at Rock Records, the boys are training for their concert, but they realize that doing everything as a trio, it feels much different than being a quartet, They're struggling to perform, And so to lighten the mood, they decide to sing the Giant Turd song when James appears at Rock Records and interprets his famous ending to the song and tells them that he is back in Big Time Rush and he's decided to leave Hawk. Now that James is back in the band, the boys and their friends have to figure out a way to promote their concert since they haven't sold a single ticket yet because Griffin decided to cancel everything on them. So they pretty much find different ways to promote their concert. I think what people in public relations should be taking notes on. When it's finally day of the concert, they go backstage to their dressing room, only to realize that the dressing room is a trap by Hawk, and the boys get trapped in the back of a truck by his assistant and are driven away in the truck by Hawk and his assistant that are trying to destroy the band's career. This is what I'm talking about when Big Time Rush plots just end up being something completely different. Like we go some and then this happens. The boys are tied up in a warehouse and they and pretty much they're supposed to be kept here until they don't show up in their concert and pretty much disappoint all their fans and the people that bought tickets and all of that. They eventually escape due to Carlos falling down the stairs while trying to escape being tied up. Carlos frees everyone and they leave the warehouse and they try to make it back to the concert, but with LA traffic, and they're in the middle of downtown, it's kind of a no-no. Mr. Sebastian pulls up in a limo and he's just like, I quit working for Hawk. Let's get you to the concert. I don't care if my chauffeur license, is taken away from me. Thanks to Sebastian, the boys make it back to the concert on time and they defeat Hawk and his assistant. They perform the song Famous in front of the crowd and they impress the audience. And also I didn't realize that Famous was a actual cover of a song by this Swedish group or whatever. I just thought it was literally written for the show, but no, it's a cover. You wanna be famous. You wanna be the one who's living the life. So Logan's rapping this song. Come on, I'll do it because I'm not playing it for copyright, but
your song is on the radio, hot rotation video, bright lights, fan mail, paparazzi on your tail, tour bus, private jet, thinking big ain't filled you yet. Just one thing you can't forget, takes more than just one in it. Aim high, never rest, put your passion to the test, give your all, never less. Famous means that you're the best.
Big Time Rush decide to impress everyone, including Griffin, who then gives them a 3-record deal, a worldwide tour, and a Sebastian, even though Gustavo doesn't know what that is. And pretty much Kellen makes Griffin promise to never do anything like this to Big Time Rush again. At the end of the episode, the boys end up getting chased by a group of girls like they did during the pilot. Sebastian becomes a limo driver in Minnesota for their neighbor, Mrs. Magikowski, because a running gag is they kept breaking their promises to her. So now she finally gets her own limo driver. Big Time Rush's first CD is released and is now available to purchase, and the musical journey continues. That is the full first season of the show. Honestly, I think it was a solid season. Obviously there were episodes and all that were super cheesy, super weird, and I think the ones that I didn't like as much I glossed over a bit more. There were some episodes that were straight up bangers. I think my favorite ones are the pilot, the Bad Boy one, the Jordan Sparks one, the video one, and then the season finale. I like all of those episodes. Let's talk about the season 1 songs. Season 1 has songs that are featured on Big Time Rush's debut album called BTR. It's not even called Big Time Rush. It's just the acronym BTR. It's their debut album and it was released October 11th, 2010. And I believe it was supposed to be released when the season finale was released. I think some stuff happened in production and all that. They were probably also just trying to find songs that fit within the context of the show as well. I made a whole table of how many times the songs were played on the show and all of that in the first season. How accurate this is, kind of accurate, kind of not. It's more so of if you could hear the auditory lyrics and all of that of these songs, then I counted it. If it was the instrumental, I didn't count it. These were all the songs that are on Big Time Rush's BTR album. All of these ones, so Famous, Any Kind of Guy, This Is Our Someday Stuck. Apparently these are all bonus tracks. I don't know what entails a bonus track now. There are also some remixes that I just didn't put on here because like they don't show up in the show at all or mentioned in the show at all. But yeah, so like Famous, Any Kind of Guy, This Is Sunday, and Stuck are all like bonus tracks. So I don't know. I guess it might depend on where you live to see if you can listen to these on streaming platforms or not. And then Shot in the Dark, yeah, this was their re-release. So on their Afterlife album that came out in 2023. So City Is Ours played 5 times, Halfway There 2 times, Count on You 1 time, just the Jordan Sparks episode. Big Time Rush was performed 4 times. This doesn't include the title sequence at all. I didn't include the title sequence at all. I didn't even talk about the title sequence. Oh my gosh. Okay, anyways, the title sequence, so iconic and all of that, but yeah, it's like Big Time Rush. You technically hear it in every episode because it's their title. Famous was actually performed 5 times, which is kind of crazy to me. Any Kind of Guy 4 times. This Is Our Someday 1 time. Stuck 3 times, and then Shot in the Dark 1 time. So yeah, that is like the amount of season 1 songs, and then the ones that haven't been performed yet, they get performed in season 2. So stay tuned for that. If you've made it this far, if you made it past season 1, good for you guys. I'm really praying to the algorithm on this that this reaches like Big Time Rush fans and all that. Otherwise, I just spent a really sad amount of time working on this video. It is a couple days later, and now we are going to be talking about season 2 of Big Time Rush. This season aired from September 25th, 2010 to January 28th, 2012. This season pretty much aired for a bit longer than a year. It consists of a total of 29 episodes. Well, depending how you count it, because there are 2-hour-long specials, I believe. There would technically be 27 episodes, but they're technically 29. Math. This is the longest running season of the show. After the first season, they went on a tour, and then after that quick little tour, they were filming this season. That's kind of crazy because it's like normally now shows don't even get more than 10 episodes. So having a 29 episode season, that's almost 30 episodes this season. That is kind of insane. I think most people remember the first 2 seasons of the show if they watched the show growing up. I think season 2 has a lot of just moments that people remember still in pop culture. I think the first season has probably the most memorable episodes, but season 2 has a lot of the songs and plots that most people would remember from the show. Without further ado, let's get into it. And also, since this is 29 episodes, I'm really going to be speeding through a lot of the plots and only talking about the most important ones. And if there's a B plot, we are glossing over them super quickly. So yeah, let's get started with season 2. The first episode we have is Welcome Back Big Time. This is the first episode that doesn't start with the words Big Time. So pretty much in this episode, the band returns from their 6-week tour, and they are triumphant, but they're also tired. And pretty much they return to the Palm Woods and realize that things changed since last season. There are new people and new faces at the Palm Woods, so now the boys have to take back their reputation. In the B plot, Logan, Gustavo, and Kelly pretty much learn that the boys have missed 6 weeks of schoolwork and must catch up to maintain their grade average, which is a C plus collectively, I guess, in order to attend this festival called Rocktoberfest, which they're set to perform at. The A plot focuses on Kendall and Joe's relationship for the most part. So pretty much Kendall and Joe's relationship is put to the test after Joe lands a role in the new television series called Newtown High, which is a CW series. I don't know if this is supposed to be like a parody of like One Tree Hill or like the OC or like shows like that, but whatever. In the show, Joe has to make out with the male lead, Jet Stetson. Jet will make more appearances in the show later, so remember him. Kendall is not thrilled that Joe has to kiss him, and Joe reassures Kendall that she's not interested in Jet and that he should know that he can trust her. And like she also mentions that during his tour, she's like, well, I had to trust you knowing that there were girls showing up at your concerts with I Heart Kendall signs. Kendall becomes super overprotective around Joe and paranoid because he learns that Jet dates all of his co stars. So Joe pretty much invites Kendall to the set to watch the kiss, and in Big Time Rush fashion, it doesn't go well because Kendall keeps interrupting their scene. And so pretty much Kendall is kicked out of the studio and has to watch them record the scene outside of it. After that, Kendall snoops through Joe's phone and sees messages from Jet, and Joe catches him, and pretty much Joe breaks up with Kendall. She tells him to just forget about her. Back in the B plot, Logan, Kelly, and Gustavo manage to get all the boys' schoolwork done on time so they can perform at Rocktoberfest. I just had to give a mention to the science fair projects that they have. So we have, does bleach affect plant growth? Types of hair. We simply have one just titled Laser, and then we have Toast by Watermelon. After they get their grades back, they're allowed to attend Rocktoberfest, so Kendall leaves a voicemail for Joe, and he pretty much apologizes to her for being so overprotective and all of that, and he tells her that he left her a ticket for Rocktoberfest, and if she comes, that means she'll give him another chance at the relationship, and if she doesn't, that means they're officially over. At Rocktoberfest, the band performs the song Till I Forget About You, and Joe arrives holding an I Heart Kendall sign, which is so cute. And I feel like a lot of people remember this moment. And also at one of their concerts, I think back in like 2022 or something, Caitlin Tarver actually attended the concert and someone made an I Heart Kendall sign and she took it. And then she became like their worldwide girl because like on stage, they always bring a girl on stage and they sing worldwide. So Kendall obviously brought her on stage and they sang worldwide. It was the cutest thing ever, you guys. Like, they sing the song Till I Forget About You. Till I Forget About You has its own music video as well on YouTube because, you know, the music videos differ. That one's like so different. Like it's like an actual like professionally filmed music video. I Forget About You it's a nice bop. Like for me, it's not one of my favorite Big Time Rush songs, but like every time I listen to it, like I'm always hype, even though this is a breakup song. So yeah, that is the first episode of season 2. New character alert, we have Mr. Jet Stetson. And the only thing I have to say about Jet is that he's just Ken. Like, that's his whole role. He's just Ken. Like, she's Barbie, he's just Ken. He's just kind of there to be comedic relief and sort of like the next pretty boy compared to like James. He's just kind of there. And like sometimes he's a part of Big Time Rush's schemes, but most of the time, Big Time Rush is just hating on him. So yeah, that's Jet. Season 2, episode 2 is Big Time Fans, and it's all about the fans. Big Time Rush in this episode finally get fan mail, and pretty much disaster results when the boys ignore advice to not give promises or personal information to their fans. Their dangerously clumsy hometown friend named Jenny Tinkler arrives in LA and pretty much shows up after Carlos promises to her that the boys will help her achieve her goal of becoming a singer and famous and all of that. Throughout this episode, her clumsiness like causes her to ruin her chances of becoming a star and getting her dream come true, and she almost gets the guys kicked out of the Palm Woods as well. I want a Big Time Rush reboot just so we can see Trisha Paytas in this role. Like, she would actually eat up this role. That's kind of like the main plot of this. In the B plot, pretty much, James befriends a young fan, and this fan asks him for advice for how he can become as cool as James. And Katie is like to James, this kid is weird. Like, he is going to do something crazy to you if you keep leading him on like that. And James just thinks that Katie has a big crush on him. And so in the episode, the kid locks James in a dog cage in the basement of the Palm Woods and says that he is going to take James's identity and become the new James of Big Time Rush. Katie manages to get James out of the dog cage, and then she tricks him into signing a contract which allows her to become his manager if he decides to go solo. Carlo and also declares that she does not have a crush on James. The episode ends with Jenny Tinkler falling through the ceiling in Rock Records, and then she joins a group called Death Smash, which is the world's most destructive band, and she joins them as lead singer. So that's that. The next episode we have is Big Time Girlfriends. In this episode, Gustavo wants Big Time Rush to sing a breakup song, but he gets annoyed when Carlos is way too happy with his attitude over this breakup song, and they reveal that he's never had a girlfriend, so he's never experienced a breakup before. Gustavo hires a girl to be Carlos's first girlfriend, so Carlos can learn a lesson about what it feels like to break up with someone. It doesn't go as planned, as Carlos really likes this girl and pretty much refuses to break up with her no matter what she does. And so pretty much the whole episode, she's trying to figure out how her and Carlos can break up with each other. In the B plot, pretty much Logan and Camille are finally a couple, but it's placed in jeopardy after James and Camille kiss when he's helping her rehearse for an audition. And pretty much the whole episode, they pretty much try to hide everything from Logan, but he eventually finds out. Logan breaks up with Camille and they plan on just being friends, but then this happens, so now they're kind of in this complicated on again, off again relationship with each other you'll see throughout this entire show. Kendall and Joe are having a hard time trying to figure out their schedules because Joe's been busy with her TV show and Kendall's been busy recording at Rock Records. And so they think about breaking up because they haven't spent a lot of time with each other and can't see each other. But then they realize that spending 1 minute a day with each other is better than never being able to see each other at all. So they go on a 1 minute date. The episode ends with the boys performing their song Boyfriend, and they film a music video. Again, certified VOP. Your boyfriend, yeah. This is not the Snoop Dogg version, which most people I think are more familiar with, but either way, original version, still a bop. They film a music video with their respective lovers for this episode. So Kendall, Joe, Camille and Logan, James and a palm tree. At the end of the episode, Carlos breaks up with his girl after she tells him that she actually hates corn dogs. Next episode is called Big Time Live. In this episode, the boys are scheduled for their first live television appearance on the local morning show called AMLA. They get bumped from the schedule, and the four of them are trying to do whatever it takes to make sure that their TV debut happens. In the process, they anger and infuriate Jane Kennedy, the producer for the show. And also in this episode, James has like a list of things he wants to do before 20, and one of them is be on television. My bestie, Mr. Ed Begley Jr. appears in this episode. He appears in previous episodes. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention the character Jenny Tinkler also appeared in the pilot. Completely forgot to mention that, glossed over that. But yeah, Mr. Ed Begley Jr., my best friend, he appears in this episode. He's been in a lot of TV shows, but the one that still sticks out to me the most is the Sweet Life on Deck episode where like they're in Sweden or something, and like he plays like the evil like uncle or something. In the B plot, Katie is obsessed with this DS game, and she can't stop playing her DS. So when the boys ask her to provide a distraction while they figure out how they can get their screen time on the show, she pretty much drives this golf cart around and she injures two people in the process while she's playing her DS while driving. I'm pretty sure she like kills a guy or something. I don't know. She pretty much drives a golf cart accidentally into the TV producer. And then the episode ends with Big Time Rush performing their song Till I Forget About You on AMLA, and their performance drives up their sales for the song, and that makes Griffin very happy. The next episode we have is their special Halloween episode titled Big Time Halloween. It is Halloween night at the Palmwoods, and it's pretty much like in this alternate timeline where Big Time Rush are monsters and they have monster personas. And okay, honestly, watching this episode, I know that this episode was a logistical nightmare. I'm fairly certain the cast still have nightmares about this episode. There's just so much to it. There's so many special effects. There's so many costumes. They didn't look like they could film this like in a short amount of time. This is one of the episodes I genuinely cannot watch like sober. Like when I was sick, I genuinely had a hard time getting through this episode. It's just like probably like their cheesiest episode yet, and that's saying a lot. About the show. James is a vampire that glows. Carlos is Frankenstein's monster. Logan is a zombie whose limbs keep falling apart throughout this entire episode. Kendall is a werewolf and he's trying to hide his werewolf identity from Joe. Griffin is Satan. Griffin is the devil himself. And pretty much he tells Gustavo that the boys can't perform on his big night of fright party unless he turns them into normal. So a human looking boy band. And pretty much throughout this episode, Gustavo is testing his hot boy band machine, and that just results in more trouble. Also, I love a Yo Gabba Gabba reference. I love Yo Gabba Gabba. Throughout this episode, James is being hunted by this vampire slayer named Muffy, which is obviously a parody of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. At this time, did kids know what Buffy the Vampire Slayer was? Like, I didn't know what Buffy the Vampire Slayer was till I was in high school. So maybe that's just a reflection on me. Kendall has to save Carlos from an angry mob and gets the courage to tell Joe he's a werewolf. That's his werewolf form. So it's like, I know that was a nightmare to get into, like for hair and makeup wise. Gustavo is able to transform the boys into normals for the night, and they perform the song Big Night. Big Night also has an official music video on the YouTube channel, which contains clips of this performance as well. Gustavo only had enough energy to transform the boys into normals for the one song. So after their performance, they change back into being monsters. So that is Big Time Halloween. The next episode we have is Big Time Sneakers. We are going to get the B plots out of the way first. So pretty much Carlos and Katie are trying to find different ways to get their favorite fruit snacks from the vending machine after Bitters overprices them. Logan and James try to buy and resell a pair of sneakers. The main plot again is with Kendall and Joe. So pretty much Joe's publicist wants the press to think that Joe and Jet are dating so they get more exposure for their show. And so Joe and Kendall must keep their relationship a secret by going on secret dates and disguises and all of that. They try sneaking around. However, the press eventually find out about their relationship. Joe's publicist threatens to lock Kendall in a closet for 5 weeks, since that is the average lifespan of celebrity gossip. Pretty much Kendall and Joe, they've had enough, and so they pretty much try to come up with a plan for Jet to be the half of another celebrity couple so they can date in peace. The plan involves a llama. Let's keep it at that. Kendall and Joe's plan works and they attend a premiere together while being bombarded by the paparazzi. The next episode is Big Time Pranks. It is Ye Day of Pranks, and that is a yearly competition that the boys run every year. This year, Katie wants to join in on the guys' competition. However, the guys refuse, saying that she's too young and too girl, and pretty much if Katie gets hurt, Kendall's mom will kill him. Katie tells this to the rest of the girls at the Palmwoods, and this prank day becomes a full-on battle between the boys and girls at the Palmwoods. Logan pretty much hurts his eye when his prank backfires on him, and he becomes Dr. Hollywood's assistant for the day. I haven't talked about Dr. Hollywood much in this recap, but he's just a doctor in Hollywood. That's all you need to know. The order of elimination for this day of pranks. So pretty much Logan pranks himself first, and then 3 random boys get pranked by their shoelaces being tied together by Katie. Then it's the Jennifers who get their lips glued by Kendall, Carlos, and James. Then Camille gets her face shot with a pie. Tyler also gets shot with multiple pies. Then Jet gets pushed and sits on a fart chair by Mr. Bitters. 4 random girls that get pranked by Kendall. And then Joe gets splattered with strawberry jam. Carlos and James get out because of Katie. And then Mr. Bitters gets splattered with rotten milk by Kendall. and Katie. The prank war ends, and pretty much Kendall and Katie end up champions after Bitters tries to stop their day with pranks, and then Bitters closes the pool for 2 weeks. This episode, I'll come back to it when I get to the later seasons, but this episode is what drives me crazy about their ages. Next episode we have is Big Time Christmas. This is one of their hour-long TV specials for this season. It is the holidays, and the guys are going Christmas shopping, and they are excited for their trip home to Minnesota. At the Palmwoods, the guys hand out their Christmas presents to their friends, and Joe gives Kendall a hockey stick with mistletoe, which all of the boys use. Then go to Rock Records to give Gustavo his gift before Gustavo heads out on his trip to Fiji and them to Minnesota. But all of a sudden, Griffin comes in and he tells Big Time Rush and Gustavo that he wants them to record a Christmas EP with one original song and 2 celebrity duets. Because Griffin. Gustavo and the boys come successful with a song titled Beautiful Christmas, and they pretty much try to convince Griffin that they should just release it as a single so all of them can go on their respective holidays. But Griffin refuses, and so they now have to find 2 celebrity duets. The boys are struggling to find celebrities that aren't busy for the holidays, and so they see that Miranda Cosgrove is holding a live TV special for Christmas, and she's filming on this day. The group manages to sneak backstage, and this involves trapping Fabio in a hamper. Fabio's back, and they pretty much get caught by Miranda, and they try to convince her to let them be on her holiday special and sing a song with her. Miranda thinks that the boys are cute, so she agrees, and they perform the song All I Want for Christmas Is You, classic Mariah Carey hit. And yeah, so now they have a second song for their Christmas EP. After the special is over, the boys and Kelly practically pray for a Christmas miracle, and Gustavo gets hit by a limo and run over multiple times, and it turns out to be Snoop Dogg's limo. And so Snoop Dogg agrees to do a collab with them. They struggle to find a song to do for this collab, but then they eventually record a song called Let's Stay in Our PJs All Christmas Long, inspired by Gustavo's biggest hit, Yard Scroll Christmas. Even with all of their hard work, though, the boys end up missing their flight to Minnesota. The gang then stays at the Palmwoods with Bitters, Gustavo, and Kelly. Next episode we have is Big Time Guru. In this episode, Big Time Rush anger Gustavo after Kendall tells Gustavo that he needs to take a chill pill. An angry Gustavo pretty much chases Big Time Rush around the Palmwoods, where then Buddha Bob performs a Himalayan monkey pinch that calms Gustavo down, but it makes him so mellow that he can't write a good song for the new Town High soundtrack, and the song is due later that day. Kendall and Kelly have to team up to help Gustavo return to his regular angry self before the new Town High producers come and hear the song that he produced. Also, on a side note, I really like plots with Kelly and Kendall. I think they work really well together, and I wish we got more of them because they're just really fun to watch. In order to get Gustavo back to his angry self, they end up hiring an insult comedian to anger Gustavo into his old personality, and it works. And so Gustavo has 2 hours to write a song before the actual Newtown High producers come in. Gustavo manages to write the song Nothing Even Matters and perform it for the producers. Nothing Even Matters is a cute song. Like, it was one of the songs that I definitely like kind of forgot about over the years, but like now after listening to their soundtracks again, I'm just like, it's a bop. I would say it's a bop for sure. And also another note in this episode, James knows the recipe for toast. The next episode we have is Big Time Rush, and this is their Valentine's Day special. Joe and Kendall are trying to help Carlos find a date for Valentine's Day, but it ultimately leads to them fighting over which girl they think is better for Carlos to go out with. James helps Katie go out with a boy that she's crushing on, but he then starts to act like an overprotective brother instead. So Katie gets annoyed with James, but she is thankful that he was there for her and that he was being protective of her. And like, I really like James and Katie's like plots together. Like, I wish we got more of them as well. Like, they're really kind of cute and all that. Like Kendall and Katie have a really cute like sibling relationship as well, but it's like Kendall's never really like super overprotective of Katie. Meanwhile, like James is usually a bit more protective of Katie. So it's an interesting dynamic. The episode ends with the boys all ending up going alone to a movie they had planned to see with their dates. The next episode we have is Big Time Beach Party, and this is the other hour-long special they have for this season. For this episode, it's revealed that the boys pretty much made a deal with Griffin that if they had a #1 hit, they and their Palmwoods friends could have a party at Griffin's Malibu beach house. Griffin never specified where they needed to have another #1 hit, so their first hit is in a fictional country called Kerplankistan. Remember that this comes in later. The boys and their friends are ready to go to the beach, but Joe shows up and tells Kendall that she can't go because she has to do reshoots for her show. Mrs. Knight and Katie head to Malibu because Mrs. Knight is trying to chase down the guys because they didn't wear their sunblock. Katie is trying to find celebrities so she can be their managers. Gustavo and Kelly plan to head to Malibu to sabotage the boys' beach day when he worries that the boys will split up because it happened with another boy band of his. He wants to turn Big Time Rush's best beach day ever into their worst beach day ever. The gang and their friends arrive at the beach, and Kendall pretty much runs into this old man who tells them that, like, this beach is magical. A crazy Big Time Rush fan named Sandy meets Kendall and pretty much forces him to be her new boyfriend, and she tries to make Joe jealous by posting pictures of them and answering all of Kendall's phone calls from Joe. Logan and Carlos have an adventure with Patchy the Pirate from SpongeBob SquarePants. SpongeBob SquarePants and Big Time Rush are set in the same universe, it appears. They're trying to find buried treasure and they manage to find it, but they ruin many of Griffin's things in the process, so Griffin takes the treasure. Katie is trying to convince Russell Brand to let her be his manager after she helps him plan a beach party that he is having at his house later that night. And to this day, I still don't know who Russell Brand is, and I still do not care. During this episode, the Big Time Rush performs their song Boyfriend at the beach. And then at the end of their performance, Mrs. Knight sprays the guys with sunscreen. Back in Kendall's plot, pretty much Sandy's ex-boyfriend gets mad at Kendo for stealing his girl. We go to James's plot, where James falls in love with a girl named Annie, who's played by Gage Golightly. I guess was on this Nickelodeon show called The Troop. I've never watched it, but I know her as Erica from Teen Wolf. For like that one season she was in Teen Wolf. James and Camille believe that Annie is a mermaid and they're trying to find proof that she is. Spoiler alert, she isn't. Sandy's ex-boyfriend challenges Kendall to an ATV race, and if Kendall loses, Big Time Rush and their friends will never be able to return to the beach again. And so during the race, Kendall runs over Gustavo, and yeah, he manages to win the race. Sandy breaks up with Kendall and takes her ex-boyfriend back. At the end of the episode, Katie books the boys to perform at Russell Brand's beach party, and they sing the song Dance, Dance, Dance. I did not remember that song at all. Watching this show again, I did not remember they performed that song. I don't even think they remember what this song is either. Like, it's just not a memorable song, which is really weird considering, like, this is like an hour-long TV special. They should have just performed like a different song. I don't know. Dance, Dance, Dance. I don't remember this song at all. It's still not even coming to my mind when I'm recapping this episode. Like, that's how unmemorable it was for me, at least. So yeah, I don't even think the Big Time Rush guys know that this song exists either. So I don't think we're getting it on an album anytime soon. But whatever, that is Big Time Beach Party. The next episode we have is Big Time Songwriters. Griffin hires new songwriters to write Big Time Rush's new single, which makes Gustavo really pouty, but they pretty much end up fighting and injuring each other while they're trying to create the song. Big Time Rush try to take that chance to convince Gustavo to let them try writing a song, but he refuses, saying that he only works solo. He doesn't want anyone else writing their music. Big Time Rush and Katie come up with a plan to distract Gustavo so the boys can try writing the songs themselves. While trying to work on the song, the boys also just end up fighting and they split up to work on it. Kendall and Carlos write a song called Oh, and James and Logan write a song called Yeah, and they fight over which song is the better one. After more fighting occurs, Kelly comes in and tells the guys to combine the songs into Oh Yeah, and Gustavo likes it. The episode ends with the boys performing their song Oh Yeah in front of Griffin, and Griffin approves it, and Griffin says that he wants to try writing a song with Gustavo and that the best songs come from fighting. And look at Griffin, you guys. Like, what? Like, I didn't remember this part happening when I watched the show as a kid, but what is this? Like, look at these guns, man. Like, apparently the actor is like, he's a bodybuilder on the side. So, like, these are his real muscles. Like, so crazy. Anyways, that is the end of the episode. The next episode we have is Big Time Reality. At the beginning of the episode, Griffin wakes the boys up and tells them that they're going to be filming a reality show immediately, and they start with them in their underwear. The film crew and the director of the show set up cameras everywhere, including the Palmwoods, their apartment, and Rock Records, and anytime Kelly and Gustavo are in front of the camera, they just freeze up. In order to keep the show interesting, the director forces the guys and their friends to make it more dramatic. So, pretty much, Carlos and James just end up maiming each other this entire episode. Logan and Camille have to fake a melodramatic relationship with each other, and Griffin hires a fake neighbor named TJ to add extra drama. TJ is an icon, by the way. I kind of wish we got more TJ. The cameras catch Kendall's swimsuit falling down at the pool, and Kendall is trying to find a way to get his butt footage back. The show is total chaos, and it is distracting the group from actually making music. Big Time Rush asks Griffin to stop the reality show, but instead the show turns into a competition, allowing the audience to vote which Big Time Rush member will get eliminated from the band, and pretty much allows them to vote for their replacement as well. Kendall, Katie, and the boys make a plan to take the film crew down and plant cameras in Griffin's office. And then they make a reality show about Griffin, and that proves to him that the reality show is just a bad idea. It's an invasion of privacy, and the show gets canceled at the end of the episode. The next episode we have is Big Time Girl Group, and this was one of my favorite episodes as a kid. The episode stars Miss Symphony Miller. I think most people know her from the show How to Rock. Miss Symphony Miller, she is an icon. The boys of Big Time Rush are jealous when their song I Know You Know is taken by Cat's Crew, which is a female girl group who Gustavo is working with and is possibly thinking of signing under his company. A war begins between Cat's Crew and Big Time Rush, who believe that Gustavo will lose interest in working with Big Time Rush in favor of this girl group and cancel them. Big Time Rush decide to seek advice from Gustavo's first boy band called Boys in the Attic, who were also destroyed by a female group signed under Rock Records. They realize that if they keep fighting with the girls, this is what their future will look like, and they decide against it. In the end, Gustavo chooses Big Time Rush over Cat's Crew, but the two bands decide to produce a song and video together, which is taken place on a spaceship that lands in an alley, and they fight Gustavo, who's dressed up as a criminal. The song, though, certified bop, okay? Like, it's so good. And Symphonique's rap, guys, come on.
Hey baby, you drive me crazy. It ain't about what you done for me lately. It's all about you. No lie, it's the truth. Just wanna say I got a big time crush on you.
Such a good song. I love it. I love it so much. I think it's like been my most played song this week, at least. In the B plot for this episode, pretty much Katie and Mrs. Knight are trying to make new friends after they realize that they don't have many friends at the Palmwoods. And after this episode, they still don't have many friends at the Palmwoods. So yeah. Anyways, that is Big Time Girl Group. Next episode we have is Green Time Rush. So this is the first episode that doesn't have big in the title. And it is their Going Green episode. For their class at the Palmwoods, because remember, they still attend Palmwood School, for Earth Day, they have a competition where the winners get a week off from school. In the B plots, Logan is teamed up with the school bully and is forced to do all the work in the project. Carlos and James work together. Katie is trying to stop Rock Records from using foam cups, but Griffin won't allow it because foam cups are the RCM CBT GlobalNet Sanuoid's biggest product. And so pretty much under the pressure from Katie, Gustavo, and Kelly, Griffin finally decides to sell paper cups instead. Kendall is partnered with Jet for this project, which they are enemies because of the whole Joe thing. Kendall realizes that Jet just living is harmful to the environment in general, so he decides to tie Jet up and just put him in the box. Don't be a Jet. Waste electricity, 2-hour shower, and is stupid. That's kind of funny. Kendall and Jet's dismay, they end up winning the competition, but their week off from school is actually a trip in which they have to speak to the governor about their project. The next episode we have is Big Time Moms, and it is their Mother's Day special. It is Mother's Day, and pretty much James's mom, Brooke Diamond, played by Miss Lisa Rinna. I don't know how they got Lisa Rinna for this, but okay. But like this makes also perfect casting as well. Like they kind of ate with this casting, not gonna lie. Brooke Diamond, she comes to the Palmwoods to bring James back home. She can train him to learn about the family business, which is the Miss Brooke Diamond Cosmetics. James is frozen in shock because he does not want to return to Minnesota because being in Hollywood is his dream. So he gets frozen in shock, and the running gag in this episode is like, in order to wake him up, they have to bring in rock legend Lita Ford to shock him out of it. Once James is shocked out of it, they pretty much explain to Gustavo and Kelly that Brooke Diamond is the Estee Lauder of the Midwest. And the boys have to act fast to save the band, and they need to stand up to Brooke Diamond, who is a woman that is not used to being told no. They try to get Gustavo to talk to Brooke, but he is unsuccessful. The boys then sing her a song titled The Mom Song, which pretty much is about how much they love their moms. None of their attempts work, but James then remembers that the only time Brooke has never gotten her way was when the other moms, so Kendall, Logan's, and Carlos's moms, teamed up together and stood up against her. The moms team up, but then they realize that Brooke just misses seeing James. And so they come up with a plan for her to see him more often in LA and all of that. And the episode ends with everyone being happy, celebrating Mother's Day in the big bounce house that Big Time Rush bought for their moms. The next episode is titled Big Time Prom Kings, and I guess I deleted one of my slides. In this episode, the Palmwoods School is holding its annual prom, and Kendall, James, Carlos, and Logan are each determined to win the title of Prom King, and they convince Gustavo and Kelly to let them hold their prom at Rock Records. In James's plot, James is trying to get an actress named Aubrey Stewart, which is a parody of Kristen Stewart, to go as his date. But pretty much throughout this episode, he becomes hunted by her bodyguards after he accidentally makes her upset. Carlos takes Jennifer number 1 to the prom, but without the other Jennifers around her, she turns out to be kind of weird. The other Jennifers threaten Carlos and say that if he breaks up with her and upsets her, they're going to beat him up. Logan is jealous of Camille and her date, and so pretty much he tries to make sure that James and his date win prom king and queen. Meanwhile, in Kendall and Joe's plot, Joe is grounded, and so she can't attend the prom. So Kendall has to come up with a plan to sneak her out of her apartment so they can attend prom together. In the middle of the episode, Big Time Rush perform Nothing Even Matters when they're getting ready for the prom. At the prom, Joe is being paranoid and just doesn't seem like she wants to be there. She thinks that her and Kendall are going to get caught by her dad. And so Kendall tries to calm her down, but then he learns that her dad actually works for the CIA. Yeah, so Joe's dad works for the CIA. Both of them are just like, oh, we are screwed. Joe's dad figures out their plan, and so Joe and Kendall are caught, and CIA agents drag them out of the prom before they can win the title of prom king and queen. Carlos mistakenly jumps Jennifer number 1, and so the Jennifers beat him up. Gustavo and Kelly decide to do a spotlight choice for the prom king and queen instead, and James and Logan end up under the spotlight, so they are now voted prom king and queen. The next episode we have is Big Time Breakup, and technically this episode and the next one could be counted together as like another hour special if you want to, because like the storylines pretty much are lined up. Let's get the B plots out of the way first. So pretty much in the B plot, James and a Latina pop star named Solana are in like this 3-day whirlwind relationship. Solana is a parody of Selena Gomez. Logan and Kelly work together to separate Carlos from his hockey helmet after Gustavo demands that he not wear it anymore. Now we get to the A plot. The A plot is mostly about Kendall and Joe. A lot of the plots in the second season revolve around their relationship. Joe is offered a role in a feature film series that has a 3-movie deal, and they learn that it is shooting in New Zealand for the next 3 years. That upsets both Kendall and Joe, as they won't be able to see each other while she's in New Zealand. Meanwhile, Gustavo wants the boys to perform a breakup song about a girl moving away halfway across the world. Joe gets more information. She tells Kendall that she can't do the movie due to her Newtown High contract. Katie then tells Kendall that Joe is lying and that she can be released from her contract if offered a part in a major motion picture. So Katie then tells Kendall that she's like, well, Joe's not taking the part because of your relationship. She's staying in LA because of you. So pretty much Katie and Kendall come up with a plan to get Joe to break up with Kendall so she can go do this movie. Kendall and Joe go on a date, and pretty much Kendall just acts rude and disgusting toward her, and that causes her to break up with him. But the next day, Joe visits Kendall, and she's just like, I realize what you're trying to do. And they kiss, and she tells her agent that she's going to do the movie. Kendall and Joe pretty much spend the one last day together before she has to leave for New Zealand. And so after her limo leaves, the boys and Kendall realize that Kendall and Joe forgot their signature goodbye kiss. I mentioned this goodbye kiss the previous season, but yeah, they forgot their goodbye kiss. The boys rush to the airport for a proper goodbye, and yeah, Kendall and Joe have their goodbye kiss, and the episode ends with Big Time Rush singing their hit song Worldwide as they watch Joe leave for New Zealand. I feel like Worldwide is, again, one of the most popular Big Time Rush songs. Most people have heard this song. Usually, most people have heard Worldwide, Boyfriend, and the Big Time Rush theme song. This is an iconic video. I remember, I don't even think I was like a huge Big Time Rush fan at the time this came out, but like I do remember watching this music video when it came out. And like what's interesting is that this sort of plot revolves most around Kendall. Kendall actually doesn't have that many lines in this song. Like James sings the entire chorus of the song. Like James was literally singing like he was the one breaking up with Joe instead. The main reason for why Joe and Kendall break up is that Caitlin Tarver was apparently like going on tour because she's also a singer. So yeah, she was going on tour in real life, so she like didn't have time to film the show while going on tour and all that, so that's why she left. I guess it just worked out because like we got this episode and then we got like a music video for Worldwide. And yeah, like big time breakup. The next episode we have is Big Time Single, and this one is pretty much so a continuation of what happens after Big Time Breakup. In this episode, Gustavo is broken because Griffin tells him to write a summer single that has the word beach in it. Meanwhile, Kendall is heartbroken after his breakup with Joe. So pretty much James, Carlos, Logan, and Kelly have to figure out how to fix Kendall and Gustavo so they can get prepared for the band's new single. James, Carlos, and Logan try to help Kendall cheer up after his breakup with Joe by doing all of these activities that make Kendall happy, just end up making Kendall more upset. And Kendall tells the guys that the boys don't know what he's going through because they've never had their hearts broken. So they each decide to date a girl from the Palmwoods just for the girls to break up with them. Logan dates and gets dumped by Camille. James dates blonde Jennifer and gets upset when blonde Jennifer ruins his perfect never been dumped record by breaking up with him instead of vice versa. And Carlos dates a red-shirted girl for 12 minutes, and it becomes the best 12 minutes of his life and is heartbroken when their relationship ends. Kendall is finally ready to record the new single, only to find a heartbroken James and Carlos. Kendall and Logan have to figure out how to fix James, and Carlos. Kelly and Gustavo hire Katie to help Gustavo with his writer's block because she did so the last time. And after hanging out with Gustavo all day, she becomes frustrated with him and she tells him, just write an upbeat song that's not about girls and call it Rule the World. At the end of the episode, Big Time Rush performs the new summer single written by Gustavo titled If I Ruled the World. And If I Rule the World is finally we enter the territory of Big Time Rush performing their songs that are on their Elevate album. The next episode we have is titled Big Time Wedding. And I feel like this episode is one that has probably like aged the least well. I don't know. Like watching it kind of made me feel uncomfortable. And I feel like it's just kind of like the representation of people and all of that and how they represented like this fictional country. You know, back in Big Time Beach Party, Big Time Rush had a #1 hit in the country of Kerplinkistan. So pretty much in this episode, the king of Kerplinkistan and the princess visit America, and they visit America because the king plans for his daughter to marry one of the Big Time Rush members. In this episode, Gustavo's secret passageway is finally revealed to the guys. It will come back in later episodes. The boys escape back to the Palm Woods and they are pretty much told to stay put in the apartment while Gustavo and Kelly figure out how to get them out of this whole marriage thing. And so James decides to not listen and he inadvertently proposes to the princess. It becomes trapped in the marriage, and so the boys have to figure out how to free James. Kendall, Logan, and Carlos enlist the help of the king's dirt boy after they learn that he's the one that the princess really loves. So they attend the wedding and they pretty much ruin it. And so they switch out James with Dirt Boy instead. The princess and Dirt Boy get married at the end of the episode. So, yeah, that's Big Time Wedding. The next episode we have is Big Time Rocker, and this is such an iconic episode for me, at least. A new rocker moves into the Palm Woods, and the boys are immediately intrigued by her. After seeing her arrive at the Palm Woods, the boys are pretty much frozen, and Katie has to snap them out of their trance. The boys learn from Bitter that her name is Lucy Stone, and she's 18 years old and has her own apartment, which really, like, impresses the guys, I guess. In the B plot, Logan and Camille have this whole, like, thing about her being a spy and all of that, and her going almost too method with it. James and Carlos pretty much compete to see who Lucy will choose as her new boyfriend, but Lucy just only wants to be friends with them. During the episode, she agrees to date both of them, only to break up with both of them and pretty much puts them in the friend zone. Kendall gets offended by Lucy after Lucy calls Big Time Rush's music cute. Kendall teams up with Gustavo and Kelly to prove to Lucy that Big Time Rush can do rock and that they rock. They manage to come up with a song but are stuck on the title. Their faces look like this after reading what's on Lucy's demo song track list. Katie has to unfreeze them and she keeps asking everyone why everyone is being paralyzed. Kendall then tells Lucy that BTR will be on the morning news and that they'll make the news by performing their new song Paralyzed on the top of a bus parked in the middle of a busy downtown intersection. And I swear to God, we need more PR stunts like this. I don't care if this is for a fictional show. Like, this is genuinely a great PR stunt. Lucy is surprised by their performance, and she pretty much joins the gang and their friend group at the end of the episode and tells Big Time Rush that their music rocks. New character alert, we have Miss Lucy Stone, and yeah, she is the new rocker at the Palm Woods, and I would say she's very sarcastic. She likes to keep people on their toes and she isn't opposed to sort of creating drama. She's very much an instigator, but she's also very clear about her boundaries and all of that, which I really like about her. She becomes more of like a recurring character in the 3rd season and all of that, and she is involved in a lot of the drama, especially like around like the Kendall plot. Most of her plots revolve around Kendall, again, because she's kind of like another sort of love interest Kendall has. There's a whole love triangle thing, and when I was watching as a kid, I don't think I liked Lucy as much as I did with Joe. And I feel like it's just because we had less time with Lucy to get to know her. But as I started rewatching the show, I actually really like Lucy. Like, I think she's kind of a funny character. I also have to support my Asian girlies. This is my official announcement that I am now a Lucy Stone stan. She's going to appear in the next couple episodes. She appears from seasons 2 to 4. The next episode we have is Big Time Strike. In this episode, the boys take a stand against Gustavo's harsh management style, which includes an electric shocks. And they pretty much decide to go on strike against Gustavo. Big Time Rush go on strike against Gustavo. Meanwhile, Kendall and Katie's mom goes on strike after Katie says that being a mother is an easy job. And so that leaves Katie to do a bunch of their household chores. They pretty much write a list of requests, but Gustavo doesn't accept them. And so with the help of Katie, the boys continue on with their strike. They plan to get their fans behind their cause, and they decide to film a video for their giant turd song. And they realize that the strike isn't going in their favor and that this video is horrible. After a long day, Katie admits to Mrs. Knight that being a mom is a hard work and apologizes to her. There's also a scene where Gustavo dresses up as Big Time Rush and he decides to modify his vocals so they sound like Big Time Rush. I don't know, this is kind of iconic of him. The boys get Mrs. Knight to pressure Gustavo into meeting some of the boys' demands. I didn't add a screenshot of it for some weird reason. But anyways, they meet with Gustavo. He accepts their demands, and the end of the episode ends with Big Time Rush performing and filming a music video for their song Superstar, which personally to me, one of my favorite songs, certified bop. We don't talk about it enough.
You wanna wild out, no wild out, all eyes on you. It's going down, down right now. You can't lose.
The next episode we have is a Big Time Contest. Big Time Rush decide to swear off dating girls after their relationships haven't ended that well. Then Pop Tiger magazine decides to hold a contest, which is called Win a Date with Big Time Rush. 4 Big Time Rush fans win the Pop Tiger magazine contest, and they get to spend a day with one of the boys from the band. And so BTR are forced to make sure their dates have a good time. Otherwise, if they don't, they could get banned from the magazine. So the winners include Bobby, and he is a demanding young boy who develops a crush on Kendall's sister, Katie. Bruna, who is an older woman who has never heard of Big Time Rush. James makes Carlos continuously switch dates with him because he continuously feels like the other girl is better. One of them is Jeanette and one of them is Tiffany. I could not tell you who either of them are. Kendall accidentally loses his date, and he pretty much spends the whole time with Gustavo and Katie trying to find Bobby. And at the end of the episode, Jeanette and Tiffany both decide to just stick with Carlos. Bruna invites her young niece, Muriel, to become Logan's date instead. Bobby gets a dance with Katie, kind of. James just spends the night at the buffet, which is a mood, if you ask me. The episode ends with Big Time Rush climbing up the magazine ladder. The next episode we have is Big Time Superheroes. Big Time Rush have finally finished recording their second album, and they upload their songs onto a hard drive to give to Griffin. Gustavo's rival, Hawk, dressed up as a hawk, breaks into Rock Records and steals the only hard drive containing Big Time Rush's second album. They also realize that Hawk has deleted all of the files off of their computer and gives the song to a new artist called Swagger that he's producing. Gustavo, Kelly, and the boys end up going to Hawk Records to break in and retrieve the drive. However, they are caught by the police and are sent to jail, where Kelly ends up bailing them out, but they are warned that if they are seen near Hawk Records again, there will be no bail. Instead of listening to the cops, they pretty much assume superhero personas and they sing along to the song Blow Your Speakers Out. We don't talk about that song enough. Blow Your Speakers Out is such a good song.
In your eyes, pull your windows down, 'cause tonight's your night to get lost in the sound. Gotta crank the music loud. Baby, blow your speakers out, blow your speakers out.
Such a good song. They then decide to fight Hawk and his henchmen, and Hawk gets arrested, and the group finally gets their hard drive back, and now they can release their second album. The next episode we have is Big Time Secret. At the beginning of the episode, Big Time Rush, Camille, and Lucy play a game where they have to reveal a secret to one another. And so James tells Carlos that he threw away a note to Carlos from Heather Fox, played by Elizabeth Gillies, which was Carlos's camp crush, and Carlos gets mad at James the entire episode. Obligated under the best friend code, James discovers that Heather is at one of the studios filming a commercial, and so he finds her and he plans a Camp Wonky Donkey Day at the Palmwoods for the three of them. At the end of the episode, Heather gives Carlos a note saying that she really likes James, and Carlos passes that note off to James. Meanwhile, with Kendall and Logan, Camille and Kendall have been spending a lot of time together, and so Lucy and Logan start to suspect that they are dating each other. It turns out that Kendall and Camille are actually learning how to figure skate, and Kendall has to keep the secret from the other band members due to their figure skating code. Kendall, however, is forced to come clean to his friends after they learn that he's broken a code, and so yeah, he and Camille tell them that he's figure skating, and the guys eventually become happy for him and tell him to do well at the figure skating competition, only for the episode to end with Camille and Kendall being horrible at figure skating and them getting hurt. The next episode we have is Big Time Interview. It's pretty much like a fictional interview with Access Hollywood, and they pretty much just recall their greatest moments and reveal pictures and like secrets and all that. It's pretty much a recap of like the first 2 seasons of the show. So you didn't really have to watch like all 3 hours of this video or whatever. Like you could have just watched this episode and probably get the same thing from them. But I personally think I did it better. We need to talk about like the graphic designers in the show, because like obviously this is like supposed to be the Big Time Rush album for the show, but what was this? Like, we have $3 and a dream, and this is their album cover for the show. Now we have the season finale for season 2, which is called Big Time Move. In this episode, Big Time Rush are playing a video game, which results in the members fighting amongst each other, and the fights become so bad that James, Logan, and Carlos decide to move out of the apartment and get their own places. In the B plot, Kelly and Gustavo are planning dates for Big Time Rush's all over the world tour, and Kendall comes and gets Gustavo to yell at the boys for fighting, and Gustavo is about to go yell at them when all of a sudden he throws his back out, so Kendall is now left to deal with this problem on his own. Logan decides to move into the Palmwoods cabanas. Carlos moves into whatever the hell this is. James ends up squatting at an old man's apartment. Kendall and Katie are trying to find ways to get the boys to move back into the apartment. However, it ultimately leads to more fighting. Kendall and Katie finally come up with a plan to get them back to the apartment and make them realize that no fight is worth losing their friendship over. They figure out that the reason that they were fighting so much was because of the new video game that they bought. The boys learn from Gustavo and Kelly that their new tour is officially a go, and they perform a song called All Over Again at the Palmwoods pool. During the song, Jennifer number 3 waves at Carlos while he performs. Meanwhile, Lucy winks in Kendall's direction while he's performing. Are these possibly hinting at something? We may never know. Yes, they're hinting at something. That is the season 2 finale. Now it is time for us to talk about the season 2 songs. Season 2 contains track from both Big Time Rush's first album, BTR, and their second album, Elevate. So I think for like contractually or whatever for the show, Big Time Rush only had released 3 albums. So this is not including the movie soundtrack as well, but pretty much throughout the show's airing, they only released 3 albums. So it makes sense that they were trying to spread the songs as much as possible. If they played all of the tracks for the first season, then they would have had to produce the second album much faster for the second season. So yeah, they pretty much decided to distribute the songs throughout, multiple seasons. To put it in another perspective, the members were definitely overworked working on the show. Like, they weren't only just recording the songs for the show, like they were doing tours, and they were working on these albums while simultaneously filming the show. They were going on tour or doing other promotional things for Nickelodeon while also trying to write on the album, because by the time we get to Elevate, they had more involvement in contributing to the albums. BTR debut album released October 11th, 2010. The songs on that were played from this album, so we have Till I Forget About You, which is 2 times, Boyfriend 2 times, City Is Ours 1 time, Nothing Even Matters 2 times, Worldwide 2 times, Halfway There 1 time, Big Night 2 times, Oh Yeah 1 time, Count on You 0, I Know You Know 1 time, Big Time Rush 2 times, Famous 0, Any Kind of Guy 0, This Is Our Someday 1 time, Stuck 0 times, and Dance Dance Dance, which is, was only for the show 1 time. Now we get to Elevate. So Elevate is the second studio album, and it was released November 21st, 2011. The production process of this album took place during their tour. The band for this one was pretty much inspired to be more involved in the writing process. So for this album, they have a total of writing credits for 8 songs. Nickelodeon hosted a special called Big Time Rush Music Sounds Better with You, which pretty much is kind of behind the scenes of their tour and their studio recording and all of that for this album. I just didn't feel like covering it for this video. So now let's talk about the songs that were aired on the show. So Music Sounds Better with You, 0. Technically it was played during Big Time Interview, but I'm gonna get to that song next video. Show Me, 0. All Over Again 1 time. No Idea 0, Covergirl 0, Love Me 0, If I Rule the World 3 times, Invisible 0, Time of Our Life 0, Superstar 2 times, You're Not Alone 0, Elevate 0, Epic 0, Blow Your Speakers 2 times, Windows Down 0, Paralyze 2 times. For these songs, these are bonus tracks and all that. So Epic's a bonus track that can only be listened to in the UK. Blow Your Speakers, I believe it was a iTunes Apple Music bonus track. So if you have Apple Music, you can listen to it. I don't know if it's on Spotify or not. Windows Down was a pre-release, re-release track. I don't know. Everyone can listen to Windows Down. Paralyzed never got an official release, so they re-recorded it and released it back in 2022 as a single. So go listen to that on streaming platforms right now. Finally, let's talk about the Big Time Rush concerts and tours and all of that. After the first season, after the second season, the boys went on 2 tours. So yeah, that's another reason why Nickelodeon casted 18-year-olds for the show. The first tour that they went on was the Big Time Rush in Concert tour, and it was their debut concert tour. They toured over US, Germany, and the UK. And so this tour supported their album BTR. Most of the time they were performing at festivals and all of that. So it was radio festivals, state fairs, amusement parks, that sort of thing. And so I guess it began April 2011 and then ended in December of 2011. I've never seen Big Time Rush in concert, and I didn't follow them closely enough for that. So these dates could be not be accurate. The next tour we have is the Better With You tour. So this was their second concert tour, and they visited the United States and Canada, and this one supported their second studio album, Elevate. The tour happened right after they finished filming season 2, and right after this tour finished, they immediately went into season 3. So they absolutely got no breaks. They got to play more theaters and auditoriums and all of that. But joining the boy band on tour was the One Direction tour. So this was when One Direction was opening for Big Time Rush. It's kind of funny. This is the end of the video. For the next video, I am going to be covering all of Big Time Rush's crossover episodes with other Nickelodeon shows, the Big Time Rush movie, and then seasons 3 and 4 of this show, and then also cover the rest of their concert tours. So it's technically going to be a longer video, but considering that season 2 had 29 episodes that we had to get through, I think we'll be fine. But yeah, thank you for watching, and hopefully I see you in my next video. This is, again, probably the stupidest video I'm ever going to make on this channel, so let's embrace my stupidity together. Yay! Thank you for watching. Bye. See you later.